Chapter 2:15. The sky of the Blood Demon territory seemed to be very low, as if it could press down at any time. The blood-red clouds were surging, making people feel extremely depressed. Chu Mu and Liang Haishan stood side by side on the ground of the first level of the Blood Demon territory, looking into the distance. The ground was uneven, and the soil was dark red, as if it had been soaked in countless amounts of blood. It exuded an astonishing sense of vicissitudes and sadness. In the distance, the shadow of a mountain stood on the ground, full of mystery, making people want to explore it. The various sceneries and auras could easily affect one's senses. The Blood Demon territory was also one of the virtual realms, similar to the Blue Orchid virtual realm that Chu Mu had once entered. Where are we going next? Liang Haishan looked around, somewhat at a loss for a moment. Neither he nor Chu Mu had ever entered the Blood Demon territory. Their understanding of it was only from the descriptions in the ancient book. Now that they were in the Blood Demon territory, they were affected by everything they saw and felt. For a moment they did not know what to do. Our purpose is to find and kill the young blood demons, Chu Mu said. Compared to Liang Haishan, he was more determined and clear-minded. His powerful soul power and the primary level of sword aura allowed him to eliminate all kinds of negative influences easily. Sensing the auras around him, Chu Mu's eyes flickered vaguely. He suddenly turned around and looked to the left. "Let's go." Liang Haishan, who had no idea what to do, hurriedly followed. After all, the Blood Demon territory was a place where blood demons lived. It was not suitable for human beings. Staying in such a place for a long time would affect one's mind and emotions. Like Liang Haishan, many people who had just entered the Blood Demon territory were affected. For a moment they were somewhat confused and depressed. As soon as Han Ruoxue appeared in the Blood Demon territory, her beautiful eyes were glittering with sharpness. The aura all over her body gathered like a sword. If Chu Mu saw her now, he would be surprised to find that Han Ruoxue had also comprehended sword aura and was not inferior to him. "I can smell fresh blood, haha. Another human has entered our territory. Little ones, follow me and enjoy the delicious food." Several thousand swordsmen entered the Blood Demon realm one after another. This foreign aura immediately alarmed the small blood demons in the Blood Demon realm. Many small blood demons woke up from their deep slumber and let out cheerful shriek. It was as if a bloody feast was about to begin. "There are 2 humans over there. What an exuberant blood chi. If I suck their blood, I'll definitely become more powerful." At the same time as the ear-piercing screams rang out, several red figures quickly flew over from the front, as fast as lightning. "It's the Blood Demon." Liang Haishan was shocked. He immediately drew his sword and slashed out a few Xiantian sword chi. Compared to Liang Haishan, Chu Mu was very calm. He had noticed the 3 small blood demons the moment they appeared. "Damned human, how dare he attack us? Let's suck his blood dry first." A small blood demon was struck by Liang Haishan's sword aura. Under the explosion of the sword aura, it was sent flying backward and tumbled a few times in the air. The wounds on its body healed in the blink of an eye. It was incomparably furious and pounced toward Liang Haishan again. "Humph, so it's just a one-striped blood demon." Liang Haishan also calmed down. A one-striped blood demon's strength was equivalent to the initial stage of Qi transformation. With his initial stage of Qi transformation cultivation, there was nothing to be afraid of. The small blood demon had a pair of small wings on its back and was extremely fast. It pounced from 3 directions, 2 toward Liang Haishan and 1 toward Chu Mu. Chu Mu stood there motionlessly, as if he was scared silly. That small blood demon was extremely happy. It loved such silly delicacies the most. It opened its sharp claws and mouth with sharp fangs, about to bite Chu Mu's neck. Suddenly there was a clanging sound. A faint green sword light remained in the air. The small blood demon was instantly sent flying. A large amount of blood spurted out from the left side of its chest, where its heart was like an arrow. It landed on the ground with a bang. It struggled on the ground and let out a shrill howl. Its sharp claws shattered the stones on the ground. A strange scene appeared. Like a leaking balloon, as the blood spurted out, the small blood demon gradually shriveled up. In the end, only a piece of skin was left on the ground. Compared to Chu Mu's clean and efficient one-sword kill, Liang Haishan's hands and feet were tied. Although their overall strength was not as good as Liang Haishan's, they were fast and could not dodge nimbly. Most importantly, after being sent flying by Liang Haishan's sword, their wounds would heal in the blink of an eye and they would pounce again. Their attacks were fierce and fearless. Chu Mu drew his sword and pierced the heart of a small blood demon in the left side of its chest. The innate sword chi gathered at the tip of the sword exploded and shattered the small blood demon's heart. The small blood demon was sent flying with blood spurting out. When it landed on the ground, it shriveled up and died without even struggling. The pressure on Liang Haishan was greatly reduced. With a few swoosh, 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 he enveloped the last small blood demon. The sword pierced through the small blood demon's left chest and came out from its back. In a flash, Chu Mu appeared beside the small blood demon that had already died. With a flick of his sword, he tore the small blood demon apart. A blood-red core the size of a longan was located on its head. Chu Mu picked it up and placed it in his hand. This was the blood demon core. There was a pattern on it. Liang Haishan was shocked. Normal people would be more or less affected when they entered this place for the first time. It would definitely be difficult for them to kill monsters like the small blood demons with one strike. Take him as an example. In terms of overall strength, he was obviously stronger than these three small blood demons. However, in a real battle, he still needed some time to adapt and find the rhythm of the battle with the small blood demons. Only then would he be able to win. However, Chu Mu was different. He immediately adapted and grasped the rhythm of the battle. Killing the small blood demons with one strike was a huge blow to Liang Haishan. The three small blood demons each had 3 one-striped blood demon cores. 2 of them died under Chu Mu's sword, and 1 died under Liang Haishan's sword. In the end, 2 blood demon cores were allocated to Chu Mu and 1 to Liang Haishan. This was proposed by Liang Haishan himself. Chu Mu had no objection to this. Liang Haishan's eyes widened as he stared at Chu Mu's left wrist. He exclaimed, "You actually have a space bracelet." Chu Mu nodded. He felt that he now possessed a certain level of strength. He no longer needed to carry the space bracelet around his chest like before. It was very inconvenient when he wanted to store things. It was much more convenient to wear it on his wrist. It's really incredible. Normal people don't have space bracelet. Liang Haishan exhaled heavily. His face was full of envy. There are more than 70,000 students in the entire inner house. I estimate that less than 5,000 people have space bracelet. Although this thing can also be exchanged with credits, it's said that it costs more than 1 million credit. 1 million credits. Chu Mu was shocked. Humans, delicious, delicious blood. Kill these blood demons. The first level of the blood demon territory covered a very large area. After several thousand people entered and scattered, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. It was not easy to meet up. Human swordsmen hunted blood demons for their blood demon cores. In turn, blood demons treated human swordsmen as delicacies, absorbing their blood to increase their own strength. This was a process of hunting and counterhunting. In the first level of the blood demon territory, as more and more small blood demons appeared, death and slaughter occurred everywhere. It was even possible to see some small blood demons fighting to the death with each other. They were fighting to see who would be the first to absorb the blood of the humans they had crippled. The sword light condensed into a line and pierced through the void. It was as fast as lightning, and the small blood demon could not react in time. This small blood demon died under Chu Mu's sword once again. Its blood demon core became Chu Mu's spoils of war. This was the 10th small blood demon that Chu Mu had killed since entering the blood demon territory. There was an obvious difference from the first time. The first time he had killed the little blood demon, although he had also pierced through the little blood demon's heart, the little blood demon had struggled for a long time before dying. However, now that the sword had pierced through the little blood demon's heart, the sword chi had entered the little blood demon's heart and crushed it. The little blood demon had died before it could even let out a scream. In Liang Haishan's eyes, Chu Mu's improvement made him extremely envious. "You're really abnormal. You can even accurately pierce through the heart of a two-striped small blood demon. It's a one-hit kill." Liang Haishan sighed. A two-striped small blood demon was equivalent to a swordsman who had achieved initial success in chi forming. Moreover, their vitality was extremely astonishing. Although they were not strong enough, their speed was astonishing. Moreover, they had a pair of small wings, so their reactions were extremely agile. Even Liang Haishan would have to spend a lot of time to kill a two-striped small blood demon. However, Chu Mu could kill it with one strike. From this point of view, Chu Mu's true strength should be above Liang Haishan's. Even Liang Haishan could not block Chu Mu's sword. In fact, Liang Haishan had overestimated Chu Mu. Chu Mu's true strength was indeed higher than Liang Haishan's. However, Chu Mu could not kill Liang Haishan with one strike like he had killed the two-striped small blood demon. Humans were more intelligent than small blood demons, especially swordsmen who had mastered innate sword chi and various swordsmanship. Coupled with actual combat experience, they could unleash astonishing strength and become even more unpredictable. Even if they used their strongest trump card, the prison-breaking sword, they would need some time to accumulate power. Experts would often seize the moment to counterattack. Small blood demons relied on their own strength. They did not have the sword chi of human swordsmen. In addition, although they were fast and agile, they were relatively fixed. Chu Mu's soul power was many times stronger than that of ordinary people. His sword vision was also near perfection. He could easily see through the small blood demon's movements and make the most accurate judgment. That was why he could kill it with one strike. However, Chu Mu would not tell Liang Haishan these things. There were two clear lines on the two-striped blood demon core. It was slightly larger than a one-striped blood demon core. The blood chi fluctuations contained inside were much stronger. Perhaps swordsmen who cultivate blood elemental sword chi can use this kind of blood demon core, Chu Mu thought to himself as he put the blood demon core into his space bracelet. Liang Haishan was not as convenient as Chu Mu. He could only put the blood demon core into a bag that he had prepared beforehand and carried it on his back. Chu Mu's space bracelet only had 1 cubic meter of space. More than 100 spirit stones took up a portion of the space. The remaining space was to store the blood demon cores he had hunted. There was no extra space for him to lend to Liang Haishan. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 216. Han Ruoxue let out a fierce roar. Her sword was like a dragon, and the condensed icy sword light pierced through the air, creating a straight vacuum. A terrifying sharpness condensed. Before the sword arrived, the sharpness had already pierced through the left chest of a 4-striped blood demon and rushed into its heart. Her sword chi cultivation base, coupled with other factors, gave Han Ruoxue terrifying strength. Killing 4-striped blood demons was as easy as chopping vegetables. Unless it was a 5-striped blood demon, it would be difficult to find anyone in the first level of the blood demon realm who could resist her sword. Han Ruoxue picked up the 4-striped blood demon core and stored it in her spatial wristband. She looked forward, her beautiful eyes flashing with a sharp light that seemed to pierce through the void. With a whoosh, Han Ruoxue turned into a snow-white rainbow and tore through the air. The aura she emitted was extremely cold and sharp, causing many 1-striped and 2-striped blood demons to hide in fear. Although they were fierce, it depended on their opponent. For such a terrifying existence whose aura alone was enough to suppress them to the point of not daring to move, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. The sound of flesh being torn apart rang out, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. Blood spurted out and splashed across the dark red ground. Corpses were strewn all over the ground. "Damned monster, don't come any closer." A swordsman fell to the ground, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. His face was filled with fear as he retreated. Even his sword had fallen to the side. His face was pale, his pupils dilated, and his eyes were bloodshot. Originally, those who could enter the inner mansion of the Sword Mansion were not ordinary swordsmen. Whether it was in terms of talent or intelligence, they were superior to ordinary people. However, the Blood Demon realm was a very strange place. The gloomy and oppressive sky and the strange aura in the air constantly influenced everyone. If they were in a state of high spirits, it would be fine. As a swordsman with a strong will, after the initial discomfort, they would be able to resist and not be affected. However, once they were injured, weakened, or affected by various negative states, the Blood Demon realm's influence on a swordsman's will would become obvious, and they would eventually succumb. Although many people knew about this from ancient books and so on, everyone had confidence in their own willpower. They felt that they could maintain their original state of mind and not be affected. Therefore, before entering, no one would talk about this point. Only those who had entered the Blood Demon realm personally knew how terrifying it was. This swordsman's will had been taken away, and fear had taken over his heart. "Kikik, human blood is really delicious." An ear-piercing and terrifying voice sounded. A tall blood-red figure walked step by step towards the terrified swordsman. There was blood dripping from its sharp claws, and it licked it with its scarlet tongue. The strange sound it made caused the swordsman to tremble uncontrollably and his hair to stand on end. "If I suck your blood dry, my power will increase again," the tall blood demon said. Its figure flashed and appeared in front of the swordsman. Its sharp claws slashed down, and blood splattered everywhere. "Die!" Liang Haishan roared and slashed out with his sword, sending the two-striped blood demon flying. Then, he took a step forward like an arrow, condensing innate sword chi on his sword and thrusting it at the two-striped blood demon. The little blood demon's reaction was extremely fast. He flapped the wings on his back and dodged to the side. Liang Haishan's sword only pierced the little blood demon's arm. Blood splattered everywhere. However, such an injury could not affect the little blood demon much. It would only enrage it. With a terrifying and sharp cry, the little blood demon drew an arc in the air and pounced. On the other side, 3 blood demons charged towards Chu Mu from the left, right and back respectively. The sharpness of their claws was comparable to pseudo-swords, while the fangs they revealed from their mouths were comparable to low-rank swords. Chu Mu stood still calmly, but the fingers on his right hand were gently moving, as if he was plucking the strings of a zither. No matter if it was the small blood demons pouncing from the left, right, or behind him, even if he didn't see them with his own eyes, Chu Mu could still feel their trajectory and angle. He could even feel where their claws and fangs would strike from. This feeling was very helpful to Chu Mu. The 3 blood demons rushed into a 3-meter radius around Chu Mu, and their speed suddenly increased. Chu Mu's calm eyes shone with sharpness. His right hand grabbed the hilt of the clear wind sword like lightning, and a bright green light streaked across the sky like a waterfall. The green waterfall did not disappear. Instead, green cold stars appeared on the left, right and back of the sword light. They were the result of merging a wisp of innate sword chi into the condensed sword light. They were extremely sharp. A shocking scene appeared. The 3 little blood demons that were flying over did not seem to see the 3 cold blue stars. They even seemed to be moving their hearts to meet the 3 cold blue stars. Liang Haishan, who had spent some time killing the 2-striped blood demon, turned around and saw this scene. He immediately opened his mouth wide and muttered, "This again. What a monster!" Puff, puff, puff. Three sounds rang out at the same time as the three one-striped blood demons were instantly sent flying backward. A tiny finger-sized hole had appeared on the left side of their chests, from which blood spurted out like arrows. Their hearts were also pierced through and minced by the wisp of sword energy. The three one-striped blood demons were easily killed by Chu Mu's sword. Liang Haishan felt that teaming up with Chu Mu was a very bad decision. He was simply looking for all kinds of blows. The 3-meter radius has become your forbidden zone, Liang Haishan said with a bitter smile. Chu Mu was silent. This was the result of killing dozens of blood demons after he entered the blood demon realm. To kill this kind of blood demon, it was usually best to kill it with a single strike. If he could not kill it with a single strike, it would be even worse if he injured the blood demon. That would enrage the blood demon and make it even harder to deal with. Chu Mu, on the other hand, usually killed dozens of blood demons with a single strike. After killing dozens of blood demons, the 3-meter radius had really become a forbidden zone. The length of a human's arm and sword would not exceed 2 meters. However, this had to take into account the speed of the blood demons, the sword light, the condensed sword chi, and so on. As a result, if a blood demon rushed into the 3-meter radius of Chu Mu's forbidden zone, it would immediately be pierced through the left side of its chest by Chu Mu's sword, crushing its heart and killing it. The blood demon realm is a good place. Chu Mu said softly, in this place, as long as you can stay true to yourself and train your swordsmanship with these blood demons, your swordsmanship will definitely improve significantly. Liang Haishan also nodded. The spiritual energy in the blood demon realm was scarce, which was not conducive to the recovery of a swordsman's sword chi. Therefore, in this place, it was best not to use any killer moves unless necessary, because killer moves often consumed a lot of sword chi. In a situation where one did not use their killing moves, the mastery of sword arts would become extremely important. The importance of various reactions, combat experience, and so on would also be magnified. How to unleash the sword's prowess to the greatest extent with the lowest depletion of one's body would become an important point. After killing so many blood demons, Chu Mu's swordsmanship had finally improved again, forming a zone that was similar to a forbidden zone. In this zone, unless the speed of the blood demons exceeded the limit that Chu Mu could capture, they would be intercepted and attacked by Chu Mu. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 217. A sharp sword light pierced the heart of a one-mark blood demon. The blood demon flew backward and let out a shrill howl. Chu Mu, what do you think of my sword move? Liang Haishan asked as he sheathed his sword and looked at Chu Mu. You've improved, but it's not enough. Chu Mu said calmly, when you stabbed your sword just now, your arm trembled, causing the stability and accuracy of your sword to deviate. The sword light is not condensed enough, and the sword energy attached to it did not crush the blood demon's heart in an instant. You can't really kill it with one strike. Swordsmen's battles were very straightforward and focused on efficiency. Even the most magnificent sword moves pursued the effect of killing the target better. Therefore, it was best to kill with one strike. Liang Haishan listened attentively and firmly remembered every word Chu Mu said. Chu Mu's swordsmanship attainment was obviously much higher than Liang Haishan's. Since the sword technique meeting, Liang Haishan had been thinking about whether to ask Chu Mu for advice on swordsmanship. However, he was restrained by his status. No matter what, Chu Mu was only a new student. In terms of seniority, he was only his junior brother. Liang Haishan could not bring himself to ask for advice from his junior brother. However, after being shocked many times, Liang Haishan put aside all his concerns and finally asked for advice from Chu Mu. Chu Mu did not hide anything and tried his best to guide him. After Liang Haishan tried out Chu Mu's guidance on how to exert force, use the sword, and so on, he found that the power of his sword had obviously improved a lot. This made him feel even more humble. He even regretted not asking for advice from Chu Mu earlier. What was the use of boasting? It could not improve his strength. While Liang Haishan was improving, Chu Mu was also improving. His improvement was even more obvious than Liang Haishan's. Chu Mu was able to comprehend and improve his swordsmanship attainment to the level of a swordsmanship grandmaster because he walked the path of the sword is a weapon, and the swordsmanship is a killing technique. As such, if he wanted to improve his swordsmanship attainments again, killing was the most direct way. However, after the first swordsman who took this path on earth broke through to the master realm, there were few who could match him. Moreover, they had entered a peaceful era where law and discipline were very important. There were not many opportunities to kill people. The most important thing was that the guru knew the price he had to pay for taking this path. In order to avoid the appearance of a homicidal maniac, he did not spread out the method for further improvement. Instead, he was buried with his death. Previously, Chu Mu did not understand this, which was why he had been practicing his basic swordsmanship diligently every day, hoping that his swordsmanship attainments would improve again. However, ever since he had broken through to the sword arts grandmaster realm, he had not improved much. However, even if Chu Mu knew that killing was the most direct way to improve, he wouldn't kill innocent civilians in order to improve his swordsmanship attainments. That would go against his principles. If a swordsman went against his principles, even if he became stronger, he would eventually go astray and would not have a good ending. It had to be said that entering the blood demon realm was a very correct decision on Chu Mu's part. Even if he did not obtain many blood demon cores in the end, just understanding how to improve his swordsmanship attainments in the most direct way was already a huge gain. As for the challenge in the small sword pagoda in the outer mansion, although he kept killing, it was ultimately an illusion. No matter how realistic it was, an illusion was still an illusion. I wonder how much my swordsmanship attainments will improve after a month in the blood demon realm? Chu Mu thought to himself. If the sword arts grandmaster realm was divided into the beginner level, Deshang, and the consummate level, then Chu Mu's swordsmanship attainments were now close to the beginner level. At this stage, all kinds of knowledge were still in a state of blurring and gradually becoming clear. After Liang Haishan dug out the blood demon cores, the two of them continued to move forward. Chu Mu, look. What's that? Liang Haishan suddenly pointed to the front, where a tall and sturdy figure was rushing towards them with quick steps. Chu Mu narrowed his eyes. His eyesight was better than Liang Haishan's. It looks a bit like a blood demon, Chu Mu said softly. He was not very sure. Indeed, the tall and strong figure was somewhat blurry in Liang Haishan's eyes, but in Chu Mu's eyes it was quite clear. It had dark red skin, and its appearance was 70% similar to the small blood demons they had killed earlier. However, it had a strong and full body, which was completely different from the small blood demons that were less than 1.2 meters tall and as thin as a match. Blood demon? Impossible. How can a blood demon be so tall? Liang Haishan could not believe it. At this time, the tall figure was even closer. Even Liang Haishan could see the figure's appearance clearly. His face immediately changed. Chu Mu's eyes narrowed into slits. A cold light swirled in his eyes as he stared at the lines on the tall figure's forehead. There were 4 lines. This situation meant that this was a 4-lined blood demon. Even if it was not a blood demon, it was at least inextricably linked to one mutated blood demon. Liang Haishan's face changed greatly. He suddenly remembered the records in the ancient records. The ancient records said that the probability of mutated blood demons appearing was extremely low. The description of mutated blood demons was also very short. Therefore, Liang Haishan did not pay too much attention to it. A 4-lined mutated blood demon is even more powerful than someone in the perfected Qi transformation realm. We are no match for it. Let's go. Without hesitation, Chu Mu and Liang Haishan quickly turned around and used their movement techniques to fly away. What is a mutated blood demon? Chu Mu asked as he turned and ran. I'm not sure either. In short, it is a type of mutated blood demon. The probability of it appearing is very low, but once it mutates, it gains abilities that ordinary blood demons do not have. Overall, it is stronger than ordinary blood demons. A one-lined mutated blood demon has the strength of an ordinary two-lined blood demon. Liang Haishan hurriedly explained, this mutated blood demon has 4 lines on its forehead. It has the strength of an ordinary 5-lined mutated blood demon. Ordinary cultivators in the perfected Qi transformation realm are no match for it. Humans, delicious fresh blood. The tall blood demon opened its mouth and let out waves of creepy laughter. The small wings on its back flapped fiercely. Although it could not fly like the other small blood demons, its speed was doubled. With a whoosh, it turned into a blood-colored bolt of lightning and charged toward Chu Mu and Liang Haishan. Not only is this mutated blood demon faster than the small blood demons we killed before, but its strength is also very prominent. Its overall strength is too strong. Even the prison-breaking sword might not be able to kill it. The strength of Chu Mu's soul made him more sensitive to auras. The aura emitted by this tall blood demon was like a tsunami. It was extremely vast and terrifying, as if it was going to drown people. It was difficult to remain calm in front of it. Under the impact of that terrifying aura, people with weak willpower would directly go soft, let alone fight. The creepy laughter behind them kept coming, and it was getting closer and closer. Chu Mu and Liang Haishan simultaneously slashed out several Xiantian sword qi with their hands. The Xiantian sword qi was extremely fast, and the mutated blood demon was charging at them at high speed. It did not dodge at all, or perhaps it thought that there was no need to dodge. The Xiantian sword qi shattered like whips hitting leather, but the mutated blood demon was not damaged at all. Realizing this, Chu Mu's heart sank. He was very clear about the sharpness of the Xiantian sword qi. Although it was not as good as the direct attack of a low-grade sword, it was still very shocking. If the Xiantian sword qi did not cause any damage, then even a low-grade sword would not be able to cause any obvious damage. The blood demon was a terrifying and evil creature that could not be killed without destroying its heart. Chu Mu, it's almost catching up. Liang Haishan's expression was very ugly. This mutated blood demon was too fast. It was rapidly closing the distance between them and was less than 100 meters. Split up, Chu Mu said without hesitation. Liang Haishan was also very decisive. The two of them immediately adjusted their directions and dashed to the left and right, increasing their speed. At this time, there was no need to conserve their sword qi. Although the spirit energy here was scarce and difficult to recover, if they did not use their movement skills with all their might, they would be caught up by the mutated blood demon. At that time, only death would await them. It seemed that the mutated blood demon did not expect Chu Mu and Liang Haishan to split up. It was slightly startled and slowed down a lot. It looked left and right as if it was making a choice. The blood qi here is purer. After 3 breaths, the mutated blood demon made a choice and chased after Chu Mu. Its reason was that Chu Mu's blood qi was purer and more attractive to it. The reason why Chu Mu's blood qi was purer than Liang Haishan's was that he had obtained external sword qi after breaking through to the Grandmaster swordsmanship level. His body had been nourished by external sword qi for a long time. He did not expect that this small benefit would become the reason why he was being chased by this terrifying mutated blood demon. It's not chasing? Liang Haishan did not feel the pressure behind him. When he looked back, there was no one behind him. He knew that the mutated blood demon had gone after Chu Mu. I hope you can get rid of that mutated blood demon, Liang Haishan said. No matter what, I owe you a favor. If I have the chance in the future, I will definitely pay you back. It dares to chase after me. Chu Mu cursed inwardly. He merged 40% of the wind essence into the flashing wind body art and ran at full speed. He was so fast that he was like a gust of wind, rolling up the sand and stones on the ground. The small wings on the back of the mutated blood demon flapped very fiercely, making dense flapping noises. Its speed increased again, and its running legs almost turned into dark red wheels rolling. Wherever it passed, it left footprints on the ground and shattered the sand and stones. However, Chu Mu used his body art with all his strength, and the distance between them was widened little by little. "Human, stop right there!" It roared as it chased after Chu Mu. Its terrifying and ferocious aura surged like a tide. Chu Mu ignored it and kept running. The mutated blood demon was incomparably furious. It opened its mouth and a bloody light condensed. In an instant, it turned into a blood-colored ball of light the size of a human head and shot out at lightning speed. The whistling sound made Chu Mu's scalp tingle. He did not even look back as he used the phantom step. The phantom was shattered by the blood-colored ball of light and exploded on the ground. Gravel flew everywhere, and the explosion created a 10-meter deep pit. The explosion caused a strong airflow impact. It was like a rolling wave, forming a gust of wind. With the help of the gust of wind formed by the surging airflow, Chu Mu's speed increased to another level. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 218. On the vast dark red earth, two figures were flying like lightning, one in front and one behind. They were less than 100 meters apart. The mutated blood demon's endurance shocked Chu Mu, and its perseverance made Chu Mu feel helpless. It kept chasing, vowing to catch up with Chu Mu and suck Chu Mu's blood dry. Chu Mu had already forgotten how far he had run and how long he had been running. There wasn't much Xiantian sword chi left in his dantian, and waves of exhaustion spread through his body like water. He wished he could just stop and lie down on the ground and have a good rest. Because he had been using the wind mentality for a long time, his mind was also filled with exhaustion. Chu Mu felt as if he had reached his limit. He knew that once he stopped or even showed the slightest sign of weakness, it would become an incentive for the mutated blood demon to catch up. This mutated blood demon was called Chu Mu, and he knew that it had terrifying endurance. The mutated blood demon's dark red skin glowed with a scarlet luster, and it looked like a bloody demon god. It roared, and a brutal aura rushed over, making Chu Mu feel numb all over. "Damn it, I have to find a way to escape," Chu Mu thought. He resisted the feeling of falling asleep and tried to think of a way. The difference in strength was too obvious, and he didn't have any advantage in speed. He felt like he was at the end of the road. The mutated blood demon once again closed the distance between Chu Mu and it was less than 50 meters. It opened its mouth, and a bloody light gathered and suddenly shot out. A bloody light bullet the size of a human head tore through the air and whistled towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu felt his scalp go numb, and he tried his best to dodge. With a boom, the blood-colored bullet of light hit the ground and exploded. Chu Mu's body staggered and flew backwards. In that instant, because he was too tired, his use of wind concept had paused. By the time he reacted, he was already a bit too slow. "Human, I will suck your blood dry. Delicious blood." The mutated blood demon roared and crazily rushed towards him. It raised its right claw and opened it. The 1-foot-long claw rippled with a scarlet luster, giving off a murderous aura. All of a sudden, a snow-white sword light pierced through the air. The icy coldness caused Chu Mu to involuntarily shiver. Wherever the snow-white sword light passed, the moisture in the air would condense into countless ice shards. The sudden appearance of the snow-white sword light contained great power. It chopped down on the sharp claws of the mutant blood demon. With a bang, the snow-white sword light shattered and the mutant blood demon was sent flying backward. Its sharp claws were covered in frost. Chu Mu and the mutant blood demon were startled at the same time. A snow-white figure shot towards them from afar like an arrow leaving the bowstring, as fast as lightning. A sword light pierced through the void, and an icy chill descended upon the earth. The mutated blood demon roared, and its strong dark red body seemed to swell up again. The dense blood light formed a halo that spread out in the air, and its two sharp claws waved repeatedly to break the frost. A terrible, ear-piercing tearing sound was heard. The sky was filled with claw shadows, about to tear the snow-white figure into pieces. However, the snow-white figure waved its sword light. Snowflakes appeared out of thin air and fell to the ground, dancing in the air. Under the snowflakes, the sky was filled with claw shadows like bubbles. The snow-white sword light seemed tough, but it was incomparably tough. It directly shattered the sky full of bloody claw shadows and cut down the mutant blood demon without any hindrance. With a bang, the mutant blood demon was bombarded by the snow-white sword light, and its body flew backward for dozens of meters. The cold white snow spread rapidly, and a layer of frost spread on the mutant blood demon's chest. This sword is too fierce, too fast, too fierce. The mutant blood demon felt as if the blood in its body had been frozen. For a moment it couldn't flow, and its power seemed to be confined. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying aura condensed into a sword and became one with the sword in its hand. This sword, full of unparalleled charm, traversed the void for dozens of meters, like a falling snow-white meteor, and stabbed at the mutant blood demon. This sword seemed to be imprinted in Chu Mu's eyes for eternity. The mutant blood demon screamed in horror, but it couldn't dodge. It could only cross its claws in front of its chest in an attempt to block this earth-shattering, sure-kill sword. This sword had the intent to kill, and it aimed to kill in one blow without holding back. The mutant blood demon crossed its claws to block, but it didn't have the slightest effect. The snow-white sword light, condensed like a thin line of sky, directly pierced through the gap between the crossed claws, broke open its chest, and pierced into its heart. The terrifying ice and snow sword aura exploded, and a chill invaded its body. The mutant blood demon's heart shattered and froze at the same time. All of its vitality was annihilated in an instant. The snow-white figure landed on the ground. Only then did Chu Mu see clearly the person who came with this unparalleled charm, Han Ruoshu. "Thank you, Senior Sister Han." Opening his eyes, Chu Mu stood up and saluted to the person who was standing on the side, motionless like a lonely cliff, with sincere respect and gratitude. If it weren't for Han Ruoshu's appearance, Chu Mu's little life would have been lost to the four-striped mutant blood demon. Therefore, it was an indisputable fact that Han Ruoshua had saved Chu Mu's life. However, Chu Mu wouldn't promise anything in return. That wasn't his habit. He would firmly remember this favor in his heart, and one day, he would definitely repay it. Moreover, after killing the mutant blood demon with that unparalleled charm, Han Ruoshua didn't abandon Chu Mu. Instead, she stood on the side and waited for Chu Mu to recover. She turned around and glanced at Chu Mu. Her beautiful eyes were as calm as water. Without saying a word, she transformed into a snow-white streak and flew away, disappearing in the blink of an eye. What a terrifying mutant blood demon! Chu Mu looked at Han Ruoshua's disappearing back, and then at the mutant blood demon that had turned into a piece of skin on the ground after being killed. He said to himself, Han Ruoshua is even more terrifying. The spiritual energy in the blood demon realm was scarce. Chu Mu had only replenished his innate sword aura after taking an aura renewal pill. As for the exhaustion on the mental level and his limbs, it would take some time to recover. During the process of recovering his innate sword aura, he had recovered more than half of his strength. Chu Mu simply sat down cross-legged again, allowing his mind and body to recover. I wonder when I will be as strong as Senior Sister Han? Chu Mu thought to himself. His eyes gradually lit up as he recalled the scene when Han Ruoshua had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Direct and fierce, without any unnecessary movements. The sword light was as condensed as a line. This Senior Sister Han's swordsmanship is definitely above Situ Ko's. That sword move in Chu Mu's mind. He replayed the scene where Han Ruoshua had used the snowflakes to send the mutant blood demon flying, and the last stunning sword move that was full of unparalleled charm. His brain was overloaded, and the soul power that he had just recovered was consumed again. That sword move contained the snow essence, and the level of comprehension was definitely above my wind essence, Chu-Mu thought to himself. In addition, I even felt the fluctuation of sword momentum from that sword move. Among the more than 70,000 students, she is ranked 53rd on the bronze sword ranking. It is not strange to say that she has comprehended more than 50% of the snow essence. It is also not strange to say that she has comprehended sword momentum, which is not inferior to mine. However, to condense the snow essence and the minor success sword momentum in one sword move, was it my illusion? Or, to combine the essence and the sword momentum in one sword move, is it a deeper application of the sword momentum? My feeling was not wrong. That sword move contained not only the snow essence, but also the sword momentum. That sword move was really a combination of the essence and the sword momentum. After being shocked, Chu-Mu was lost in thought. Sword momentum. In the Qingfeng sword sect, he was still an outer disciple. Facing the pressure of the inner disciple Wang Feng, he touched the surface of the sword momentum for the first time, but he did not understand it at that time. It was the sword pavilion elder who opened a window for Chu-Mu, allowing him to see the scenery outside, and let him know the realm of the sword way, sword momentum. Since then, Chu-Mu had been working hard to comprehend it, and finally, by chance, he had comprehended the half-step sword momentum. Then, he had perfected the sword momentum and reached the entry level. However, the application of the sword momentum was very monotonous. It was only released when necessary to frighten the enemy, and strive for an instant kill. Until he saw the battle between Huangfu Shenglong and Ouyang Qingye in the outer palace. Huangfu Shenglong had used the sword momentum to release the sword momentum into the sword in his hand. The power of that sword had shocked Chu-Mu, and at the same time, opened a door for Chu-Mu. The scenery outside the door was an extension of that window. After that, Chu-Mu worked hard to comprehend how to condense the sword momentum into the sword. Finally, he took the opportunity when Huangfu Shenglong and the others broke through to the Qi transformation realm to successfully comprehend and create the prison-breaking sword. However, he did not expect that before the prison-breaking sword could shine, he would suddenly see a sword that surpassed the prison-breaking sword. In other words, Han Ruoshue's sword was equivalent to an upgraded version of the prison-breaking sword. All kinds of thoughts filled his mind. Is that sword an extension of the sword momentum or the sword momentum? This thought suddenly appeared in Chu-Mu's mind. That sword had both the sword momentum and the sword momentum, and the two were merged into one. Was it an extension of the sword momentum or the sword momentum? After thinking hard, Chu-Mu suddenly became clear-headed and could not help but reveal a self-mocking smile. Whether it is an extension of the sword momentum or the sword momentum, it is a sword that has successfully merged the sword momentum and the sword momentum into one. Its power is much stronger than the prison-breaking sword alone. What I need to do is to comprehend this sword and figure out how to merge the sword momentum and the sword momentum into one to release it. Sword Dao Realm. Sword Momentum. It is indeed more profound, rich, and unpredictable than I imagined. Swordsman. Swordsman. As expected of a civilization that has developed for tens of thousands of years, far surpassing swordsmen who only have a few thousand years of history. Chu-Mu never thought that the swordsmen of the ancient sword continent were inferior to swordsmen. In truth, the two were similar and had their own strength. In comparison, swordsmen focused on basic sword techniques and had an unparalleled foundation. For swordsmen, basic sword techniques were only a transition, but they were indispensable. They would develop more and more in the future. It is not easy to comprehend this sword. At least, I have no idea how to do it now. Chu-Mu thought to himself, I'd better recover my essence, energy, and spirit to their peak before continuing to hunt for small blood demons and obtain their blood demon cores. As for this sword, I can slowly comprehend it. With my comprehension ability, it shouldn't take me too much time to fully comprehend it. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 219. The sword light was sharp and as fast as lightning, sweeping across the void. This strike did not use sword energy or artistic conception. It was not even a basic move of swordsmanship. It was just a simple horizontal strike of basic swordsmanship. The one-striped blood demon that was charging at him paused. Its head flew high into the air and fell to the ground. The blood demons did not have sword energy similar to human swordsmen's sword energy. They relied on the strength of their blood and the toughness of their skin. Moreover, the strength of their blood would create an invisible layer of protection on their tough skin. Even the skin of a one-striped blood demon could not be cut open by a pseudo-sword, unless the pseudo-sword was imbued with innate sword energy. Even with the sharpness of an inferior-grade sword, it was not easy to cut open the skin of a one-mark blood demon without using his innate sword aura and intent realm, let alone cut off his head with a single strike. Chu-Mu did it. It was not that his breeze sword was sharper than other inferior-grade swords. It was just a very ordinary inferior-grade sword. The reason why he could cut off the head of the one-striped blood demon with one strike was that Chu-Mu had unleashed 100% or even 120% of the sharpness of the breeze sword. When the sword cut the neck of the blood demon, Chu-Mu had used the swordsmanship techniques he had inherited. He had shaken the blade at a high speed, causing a high frequency of vibration and creating an even more terrifying cutting force. This was completely based on his unfathomable swordsmanship attainments and his compatibility with the sword. An excellent swordsman had to understand the sword in his hand. He had to be 100% compatible with the sword in his hand in order to unleash 120% of the sword's power. Otherwise, even if he was given a better sword, he would not be able to unleash the sword's power perfectly if he was not 100% compatible with the sword. He would not be able to unleash the sword's power perfectly, and he would not be able to inflict too much damage. There was a saying in the world of swordsmen on earth: when you are perfectly compatible with the sword in your hand and your swordsmanship is cultivated to an unfathomable level, even ghosts and gods will have to retreat when the two become one. The frequency of vibration is higher. My swordsmanship attainments have indeed improved. When his gaze fell on the front, Chu-Mu was immediately shocked. The one-striped blood demon's head rapidly shriveled until only a piece of skin was left on the ground. However, there was no blood spurting out from the headless body of the little blood demon. The wound on its neck kept wriggling, and a mass of red suddenly shot out. At first, it was only the size of an egg, but it quickly expanded, and a brand new head appeared. No wonder it's said that the heart is the blood demon's only weakness. Chu-Mu calmed down and stabbed out. The condensed sword light pierced through the little blood demon's heart. After picking out the blood demon core, Chu-Mu felt strange. The blood demon core was found in the head of the little blood demon. There was no blood demon core in the head that he had cut off earlier, but it just so happened that there was one in this newly born head. After thinking for a while, Chu-Mu could not figure out the mystery. He gave up thinking about it. There were too many things that he needed to think about. There was no need for him to waste his time on things that were not of direct and practical help to him. During the trip to the blood demon realm, Chu-Mu had shifted his focus from collecting more blood demon cores to honing his basic swordsmanship. He was striving to improve his mastery of basic swordsmanship again in the short period of 1 month so that he could reach a higher level of swordsmanship. Swoosh! Bang! Suddenly, a sharp sound came from afar. Chu-Mu looked over and saw a ray of light shooting into the sky from the ground and exploding like firework. It's similar to a signal flare. Blood demons don't have such things. It should be a swordsman who has entered the blood demon realm. With a thought, Chu-Mu performed quick wind shadow and rushed toward the signal flare. Since there was a signal flare, it meant that there was danger. The danger in the blood demon realm usually came from the little blood demons. Based on this conjecture, it was possible that the students of the Sword Mansion had sent out the signal flare for help because there were many little blood demons surrounding them. Chu Mu's goal was to get closer and take a look. If it was within his ability, he would kill them. But if the little blood demons were too strong, he could only watch them die. Kill! Why are there so many of them? Delicious, delicious blood. This is mine. When Chu Mu arrived, he was shocked. There were dozens of little blood demons in front of him. They formed a circle and surrounded the 3 students of the Sword Mansion. Among the group of little blood demons, there were several shriveled and almost decayed corpses. They were the corpses of human swordsmen. Their bodies were covered with bloody fangs. The 3 students stood back to back and leaned against each other to form a triangle. They were bathed in blood. The blood belonged to both the little blood demons and humans. The 3 of them looked tired. Their eyes were filled with madness and fear. There were too many little blood demons. Although most of them were one-striped blood demons and there were only a dozen two-striped blood demons, their fearless fighting style made them tired. The only weakness of a blood demon was its heart. Perhaps with their initial chi transformation, realm cultivation, and superb swordsmanship, they could quickly pierce through the heart of a little blood demon and kill it in a one-on-one fight. But surrounded by dozens of little blood demons, each of them had to face the attacks of at least 3 little blood demons at the same time. It was impossible for them to pierce through a little blood demon's heart. Not piercing through the heart but only causing damage to other parts of the body would make the little blood demons even crazier. On the contrary, if they were scratched by the claws of the little blood demons, the wounds would be difficult to heal. Blood would continuously flow out, and their essence, chi, and spirit would decline. In the end, they would either die from blood loss or from the sharp claws and fangs of the little blood demons. Their blood would also stimulate the little blood demons, making them crazier and more bloodthirsty. Chu Mu glanced over and discovered that although there were many little blood demons, they were only one-stripe and two-stripe blood demons. This made him heave a sigh of relief. There are a total of 53 little blood demons, which means 53 blood demon cores. Chu Mu thought to himself. He turned into a gust of wind and attacked. The clear wind sword pierced through the air, creating a green streak. The connate sword chi condensed at the tip of the sword and pierced through the void like a cold star. The sword directly pierced through the back of a little blood demon, where its heart was. The sword chi strangled it. Chu Mu did not stop. He killed one with each step he took. His appearance was too sudden and too fast. It was not until the 4th little blood demon died under his sword that he attracted the attention of the other little blood demons and the 3 Sword Mansion students. Someone is here to help. The 3 swordsmen were immediately delighted. But when they saw that there was only one person, the joy on their faces froze, and their hearts sank. One person? Even if Deshang was in the Chi transformation realm, it would not be easy for him to kill so many little blood demons with his sword chi. If he was not careful, he might even be tortured to death by these little blood demons. In the next second, a scene that made their hair stand on end and their bodies tremble appeared. One sword strike, one kill. It was as if there was no one around. They saw that person standing still. The little blood demons all let out sharp howls as if they were enraged. The little wings on their backs flapped crazily, and they flew toward Chu Mu. Chu Mu's face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Sword light condensed, and his sword was like a dragon. He did not need to look with his eyes or turn his head to know what was going on around him. The little blood demons surrounded Chu Mu from all directions. They opened their sharp claws and bared their fangs as they flew toward him. They were extremely ferocious. The 3 swordsmen only saw that under the encirclement of the little blood demons, there seemed to be wisps of dark sword light shooting into the void. The darkness was a sign that the sword light had been condensed to a certain limit. Under such condensed sword light, the power of the sword would multiply and become extremely terrifying. The three swordsmen looked at each other, and their hearts trembled. They all felt that this reinforcement, who they had yet to see his true face, was terrifying. To be able to possess such condensed sword light meant that his swordsmanship attainments must be extremely high. It was something that they could never hope to catch up to. The 3-meter forbidden zone reappeared. Any little blood demon that flew within 3 meters of Chu Mu would be greeted by a cold green star that contained a wisp of innate sword chi. One-stripe little blood demons could not dodge the cold green star at all. Their hearts would be pierced in an instant, and the wisp of innate sword chi would explode in their hearts and mince them into pieces. Killing a one-stripe little blood demon in the 3-meter forbidden zone was a piece of cake. However, Chu Mu discovered that the 3-meter forbidden zone was somewhat difficult for him to deal with a 2-stripe little blood demon. The 2-stripe little blood demon was obviously superior to the 1-stripe little blood demon in terms of strength, speed, and other aspects. The cold green star could only barely hit the left side of the 2-stripe little blood demon's chest and split it open. However, the wisp of innate sword chi contained in it was consumed, and it could not mince the 2-stripe little blood demon's heart at all. As a result, he could not kill the 2-stripe little blood demon with one strike. This has nothing to do with my swordsmanship attainments. It's purely because the power of the innate sword chi is not strong enough. If my cultivation base can reach the initial level of the chi transformation realm, the power of the innate sword chi will be even stronger, and I'll be able to kill the 2-stripe little blood demon with one strike. Or, if I've already cultivated the 9 transformations of heaven origin, the innate sword chi will definitely be purer and more condensed than it is now, and I'll be able to kill the 2-stripe little blood demon with one strike. That was what he said, but there were no ifs. It was just a hypothesis. Even if he could not kill the 2-stripe little blood demon with one strike, he could still injure them by eliminating all distracting thoughts. When the 2-stripe little blood demon flew into a rage and pounced at him again, 2 cold green stars pierced through the air one after another. With a puff, the first cold green star contained a wisp of innate sword chi and opened a small wound on the left side of the 2-stripe little blood demon's chest. The wound was blocked by the innate sword chi and could not heal immediately. The second cold green star immediately pierced through the small wound that was about to heal and went straight for the heart. The innate sword chi exploded in the heart and destroyed it. The 2-stripe little blood demon let out a shrill scream and dashed around in midair. After all, the 2-stripe little blood demon was not directly pierced by a sword, so it could not kill it instantly. However, the destruction of its heart also quickly cut off its vitality. Amid its shrill screams and struggles, it fell to its death. The little blood demon fell to the ground like a bird that had been shot. The 3 swordsmen who were saved were dumbfounded. The little blood demon's struggles and screams before its death made their scalps go numb, and they couldn't help but shiver. A wisp of fear surged up in their hearts. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 220. Of the 53 little blood demons, only 3 2-striped ones were still attacking Chu Mu. On the ground, within a radius of 3 meters around Chu Mu, the bodies of the little blood demons were scattered all over the place. Their shriveled bodies piled up in a weird circle. There were drops of blood on the ground within a radius of 3 meters. That alone was enough to make the pupils of the 3 swordsmen constrict violently. Their hair stood on end, and they were trembling all over. Such swordsmanship was enough to scare away ghosts and gods. Another 2 blue stars appeared and killed a 2-striped blood demon. When the blood dripped down, the other 2 2-striped blood demons suddenly let out ear-piercing shriek. They turned around in midair and flew into the distance. The 2 2-striped blood demons, who were not afraid of death, were scared and ran away. Chu Mu could only watch the 2 2-striped blood demons run away. It was not that he did not want to kill them, but that he could not. Right now, the 3-meter forbidden zone was only a prototype. It would take 3 breaths to enter or leave the zone. With the speed of the 2 striped blood demons, and with all their strength, they would be able to fly more than 100 or 2 meters away in 3 breaths. It would be impossible to catch up with them. The 3 students of the Sword Mansion finally came to themselves. One of them hurriedly saluted Chu Mu. "Thank you for your help, senior brother." Their hair was disheveled, and their faces were stained with blood. Chu Mu could not see their faces clearly. "It's nothing," Chu Mu said. Of course, he would not tell them that his purpose was not to save them, but to get the blood demon cores of the little blood demons. Although his main purpose of entering the blood demon realm had changed, it was still a good thing that he could get more blood demon cores. Of the 3, only one person didn't perform a sword salute to Chu Mu, but Chu Mu didn't mind. The man shook his head, making his hair even messier and covering his face even more. However, his eyes stared at Chu Mu through the gaps in his hair. Chu Mu walked to the shriveled corpses of the small blood demons on the ground. He cut open the skulls with his sword and picked out the blood demon cores one by one and put them into his space bracelet. He was already very familiar with such things and was very used to it. Space bracelet. The swordsman, who had been silent all this time, suddenly sent a message to the other 2. "He has a space bracelet." The other 2 took a closer look and were shocked. A spatial bracelet. That was a treasure that could only be exchanged for with 1,000,000 credit. They didn't have it. They didn't expect that the person who saved them would have one. A space bracelet is worth 1,000,000 credit. You've seen his swordsmanship. I believe there must be a lot of blood demon cores in that space bracelet. Together with the 51 here, they're worth a lot of credits. No, he just saved us. If it weren't for him, we would probably have died at the hands of those little blood demons. Humph. I'm afraid his purpose wasn't to save us, but to kill those little blood demons and obtain their blood demon cores. That may be true, but it's an indisputable fact that the 3 of us were saved because of him. I can't do such an ungrateful thing to attack him. The argument between the 3 of them was carried out using sword auras. They were some distance away from Chu Mu, so Chu Mu couldn't hear them. You can choose not to attack. As long as you don't make a sound, I can give you 200,000 credits from the loot after killing him. With these 200,000 credits, I believe you can exchange them for something very helpful to you. The man immediately fell silent. The reason he took the risk to enter the blood demon realm was to obtain blood demon cores and exchange them for credit. 200,000 credits. If converted into blood demon cores, it would be equivalent to 2,001 striped blood demon cores. It meant that he had to kill 2,001 striped blood demons, which was simply impossible for him. Compared to the so-called life-saving grace, the 200,000 credits were more tempting. Remember what you said, Gu Shiping. After killing him and leaving the blood demon realm, you must give me 200,000 credits, he finally said. Don't worry. You won't be left out. Gu Shiping coldly snorted and transmitted his voice. Yes, he was Gu Shiping, a member of the Heavenly King's palace. He was the one who was dissatisfied and even jealous because Chu Mu refused to join the Heavenly King's palace. From the moment he recognized Chu Mu, the jealousy in his heart burned like a raging fire. Coupled with the fact that Chu Mu had a space bracelet and so on, it gave him more than enough reason to kill him. As for the life-saving grace, how much could it be worth? They could all see that Chu Mu's cultivation was only at the Qi transformation stage. Even if he had terrifying swordsmanship, if they suddenly attacked him and caught him off guard, they would definitely be able to kill him. Gu Shiping and the other person subconsciously walked towards Chu Mu quietly. Senior brother, let us help you, the swordsman next to Gu Shiping said aloud. He pulled out his sword and stabbed at the head of a shriveled little blood demon on the ground. Gu Shiping also pulled out his sword and suddenly stabbed at Chu Mu's back. In a flash, the sword aura and murderous intent filled the air. This sword was determined to kill. The swordsman who stabbed at the little blood demon's head suddenly turned the tip of his sword and slashed at Chu Mu's neck. It was too sudden and extremely dangerous. Gu Shiping's eyes were filled with murderous intent. There was a hint of joy and madness in them. This sword was unexpected and had a 100% chance of killing. In the next second, the joy and madness in Gu Shiping's eyes froze and turned into astonishment. This was because the sword had indeed pierced through Chu Mu's body, but there was no force behind it. In other words, the sword had missed. The Chu Mu in front of them had unknowingly turned into an afterimage and slowly dissipated under their swords. "What are you waiting for?" Gu Shiping's reaction was extremely fast. He sensed that something was wrong and immediately roared. He wanted the third person to attack as well. With the strength of the 3 initial Qi transformation realm, they might be able to fight Chu Mu. It had to be said that the terrifying swordsmanship that Chu Mu had displayed to kill the little blood demon had already thrown the 3 of them into disarray. Their fear of Chu Mu had risen to a level higher than that of Dishang, who was in the Qi transformation realm. The 3 of them attacked again. This time, they didn't need to hide. Innate sword Qi surged and their killer moves were displayed. In an instant, sand and stones were swept across the sky. Flames burned the ground and lightning flashed across the sky. The lightning was dazzling. However, their killer moves all missed. What they destroyed was only Chu Mu's phantom. The perfected phantom step made it difficult to distinguish between real and fake. A dim sword light seemed to come from the void and broke through one of the swordsman's protective sword Qi. The sharpness of the sword made his heart contract instantly. It was as if he had killed the little blood demon. The sword pierced the right side of his chest and pierced his heart. Innate sword Qi burst forth and crushed his heart. The heart was also one of the weaknesses of humans. "How did you avoid our attack?" Gu Shiping roared. He was extremely unwilling. This attack should have been foolproof. Chu Mu didn't answer. The reason he knew about their attack was completely due to his sharp sense of killing intent. In that instant, when Gu Shiping and the others had the intention to kill, traces of killing intent leaked out. Chu Mu immediately sensed it. He wasn't stupid. Even if he had saved these 3 people in passing, Chu Mu wouldn't let down his guard. However, he didn't need to tell Gu Shiping. There was only one outcome if they wanted to kill him. They would be killed by him. Human swordsmen were not like the little blood demon. Chu Mu used the perfected phantom step and took advantage of their confusion to kill one of them. This made the remaining 2 even more terrified. Using the 44% wind concept to the limit and combining it with the perfect phantom step, it caused Chu Mu's body to become even more unpredictable as it alternated between true and false. If Gu Shiping and the other swordsmen could get rid of the fear in their hearts and calm down, they might be able to contend with Chu Mu. It would be extremely easy for Chu Mu to kill them in a 1 versus 2 situation. However, they couldn't even use 50% of their strength right now. From the moment they decided to attack Chu Mu, their fates had already been decided. After a few consecutive moves, Chu Mu's sword knocked away Gu Shiping's sword and slashed his neck. Blood spurted out like a fountain. "You!" Gu Shiping pointed at Chu Mu but couldn't say anything. He covered his neck with one hand and fell weakly to the ground with eyes full of unwillingness. He was extremely unwilling. The ending shouldn't be like this. The one who should die should be Chu Mu, not him. Even when he was about to die, Gu Shiping didn't feel any regret. If such a despicable person didn't die, he would only bring more unnecessary trouble to Chu Mu. "Wait!" The 3rd swordsman hurriedly shouted. It was all Gu Shiping's idea. "I even objected to it. You are our savior, but you also attacked me." Chu Mu's words left the other party speechless. "I can compensate you. You didn't lose anything. I'll give you all the blood demon cores I obtained," the other party hurriedly shouted. "If I kill you, the blood demon cores will still be mine," Chu Mu said coldly. "No, Gu Shiping is a member of the Heavenly King Palace. If you kill him, the Heavenly King Palace might investigate this matter. I can make up a reason, the other party said again. Leaving you alive is the worst thing to do. Chumu wasn't moved at all. Regardless of whether the Heavenly King Palace would investigate or not, leaving no one alive was the best thing to do. Otherwise, if he let this person go and reported to the Heavenly King Palace, Chumu wouldn't be able to fight against them. Phantom step, wind sweep, continuously changing and pushing it to the limit. It made the other party's vision a mess. They couldn't tell what was going on and could only attack randomly. Their sword chi was quickly consumed. Chumu quickly moved, avoiding the other party's attack. Just when the other party's attack stopped, he seized the opportunity and stabbed out. With a poochie sound, the sword pierced through the throat. Shaking off the blood on the tip of the sword, Chumu calmly looked at the person in front of him. He covered his throat with both hands. Blood kept flowing out through the gaps between his fingers. His eyes were fixed on Chumu, filled with unwillingness and anger. His body softened and fell down. Those who kill will be killed, not to mention those who bite the hand that feeds them. The sword of my generation should be happy to repay kindness and revenge. Chumu softly muttered to himself. He put the breeze sword back into its scabbard. His gaze slowly swept across the three corpses, and he began to organize the spoils. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 221. The counting was complete. In addition to the 51 blood demons killed by Chumu, there were 23 blood demons killed by Gu Shiping and the others. Among them, 54 were one-striped blood demons, 20 were two-striped blood demons, and the 3 swordsmen killed by Gu Shiping, as well as the blood demon cores in the bags of the dead swordsmen, whose blood had been sucked dry by the blood demons. This time, Chumu obtained a total of 275 one-striped blood demon cores and 45 two-striped blood demon cores. A one-striped blood demon core was worth 100 credits, and a two-striped blood demon core was worth 200 credit. This time, Chumu would obtain 36,500 credit. If the blood demon cores obtained by Chumu were included, the total credits would exceed 50,000 credit. 9 cycles of heavenly origin. Once I leave the blood demon realm, you'll be mine, Chumu said to himself. In addition to the blood demon cores, Chumu also found some elixirs on these people. There were 23 chi renewal pills, 18 scarlet blood pills, and 16 gold recovery pills. The chi renewal pill was used to replenish innate sword chi, the scarlet blood pill was used to replenish blood, and the gold recovery pill was used to heal injuries. It was very effective on external injuries and had a soothing effect on internal injuries. Comparatively speaking, elixirs that could heal internal injuries and increase cultivation were rarer and more valuable. What made Chumu sigh inwardly was that apart from the blood demon cores and elixirs, he didn't find any sword techniques. But after thinking about it carefully, he felt relieved. After all, killing blood demons didn't require those things. Moreover, even if someone brought them in and he found them, so what? Although the manuals exchanged from the Sword Mansion Scripture Tower were all handwritten copies, the Sword Mansion had a clear record of who had exchanged for what manuals and so on. According to the Sword Mansion's rules, apart from the person who exchanged for the manuals, no one else was allowed to practice them. Otherwise, once the Sword Mansion found out the truth, they would be punished according to the rules. A light punishment would be expulsion from the Sword Mansion, and a heavy punishment would be death on the spot. Therefore, although some people had thought of cheating, when they thought of the consequences of their mistakes, they felt that the gains did not make up for the losses. Even if he was only expelled from the Sword Mansion, it would still be a huge stain on his life. After putting all the blood demon cores and pills into the space bracelet, the space inside was almost full. How good would it be if my spatial bracelet was a middle-grade spatial bracelet? Chumu thought to himself. After entering the inner mansion, there were related books in the independent sword tower that could be read at any time, including the classification of the space bracelet. The black iron space wristband was a low-rank space wristband, the bronze space wristband was a middle-rank space wristband, the silver space wristband was a high-rank space wristband, and the gold space wristband was a supreme-rank space wristband. Different colors, different grades, and different internal spaces. The internal space of a low-grade space wristband was only 1 cubic meter, the internal space of a middle-grade space wristband was 10 cubic meters, and so on. The internal space of an upper-grade space wristband was 100 cubic meters, and the internal space of an extreme-grade space wristband was 1,000 cubic meters. The spatial bracelet was too precious. Just the low-grade bracelet would cost 1,000,000 credits, and the mid-grade bracelet would cost an unknown amount. Chu Mu did not even dare to think about the high-grade bracelet. Now, he felt that if he could obtain a middle-grade space wristband with an internal space of 10 cubic meters, he would be very satisfied. 7 corpses, 7 low-grade swords. Chu Mu chose a metal elemental sword called the Gold Point Sword and carried it on his back. As for the other 6 low-grade swords, they were inconvenient to carry, so Chu Mu did not care about them. With the Gold Point Sword, the dual sword art could be put to good use. The dual sword art danced and the sword light filled the air. In the 3-meter forbidden zone, only death awaited. With the dual sword art, the 2-striped blood demon was also beheaded in an instant, dying an unnatural death. After using the dual sword art, Chu Mu's strength increased by another 30%. He picked up the blood demon nucleus and stored it in the space bracelet, and inserted the gold point sword into the scabbard on his back. The dual sword art could actually be regarded as one of Chu Mu's less important trump cards. If the enemy was not very strong, he could deal with it with a single sword. If the enemy was strong, he would use both swords. The blood-red sword light was swung. With a squelch, the sword pierced the neck of a 2-striped blood demon. A strange scene appeared. The 2-striped blood demon's body rapidly shriveled, and its blood flowed continuously through the blood-red longsword to the sword wielder. After a while, the 2-striped blood demon was left with only its skin. It did not even have a blood demon nucleus. It was flung away by the sword. The sword wielder put away the blood-red longsword and looked into the distance. There seemed to be a blood-red vortex in his strange eyes, which were incomparably deep. Another swordsman has entered the blood demon realm. Their blood is not inferior to the blood demons at all. He muttered to himself. A hair-raising voice came out of his thin lips and dissipated with a gust of wind. In a flash, the sword wielder turned into a blood-red stream of light and quickly flew into the distance. Walking on the vast, dark red land, Chu Mu searched for blood demons to kill while looking for the so-called blood evil stones and blood essences. Compared to the blood demon nucleus, blood evil stones and blood essences were much more valuable. They could be exchanged for many times more credit. There was no day or night in the blood demon realm. There was no alternation between the sun and the moon. Chu Mu did not know how many days he had been here. He could only feel that a long time had passed. In front of him, there were 3 corpses on the ground. They were human swordsmen. Their bodies had long shriveled up because they had lost all their blood. Human swordsmen hunted blood demons, and blood demons hunted human swordsmen. There was nothing unusual about this. Moreover, after blood demons sucked the blood of human swordsmen dry, they would often take away the swords and bags of the swordsmen. These were their spoils of war. When Chu Mu passed by the 3 shriveled corpses, he inadvertently glanced at them and was startled. This was because he found the 3 corpses somewhat familiar. Weren't they He Zhen, Zhang Xiyuan, and the others who had mocked him earlier? He turned his gaze and saw the 3 swords and 3 open bags. This was very unusual. His pupils constricted as he slowly scanned the corpses. His gaze landed on the wound on one of the corpses, and then slowly slid to the other 2 corpses. Squatting down, Chu Mu carefully examined the corpses. He found that there was only one wound on each of the 3 corpses. It was on their necks. This wound is different from the claws and fangs of the blood demons. Instead, it seems to have been left by a sword. Chu Mu thought to himself, if it was really a wound left by a sword, then the blade of the sword should be narrower than the blade of a regular sword. The thickness of the sword should also be thinner. Chu Mu stood up and looked around. He was even more perplexed. There were traces of sword aura in the surroundings. Clearly, a battle had taken place. However, other than the 3 corpses, there were no corpses of the young blood demons. There was not even a trace of them. However, there was nothing in the 3 open bags. Could it be that the 3 of them had an internal conflict? That's not right. The wounds on their necks were not caused by any sword. Could it be that a 4th person killed the 3 of them and took away all the blood demon cores in their bags? No. In addition to the wounds on their necks, their blood was also sucked dry. If it was a swordsman, if it was a blood demon. For a moment, Chu Mu was so confused that he could not find a clue. Could it be that they encountered a mutated blood demon? Chu Mu speculated in the end. Unable to find a conclusion, Chu Mu temporarily suppressed his confusion and moved on. "Human, I'm going to suck your blood dry." Strange cries rang out. Several blood demons flew at him from different angles. Chu Mu's expression was cold. His sword light was like a dragon. Several sword lights took away a few lives and picked out a few blood demon cores. Suddenly, Chu Mu felt his scalp go numb. A fatal sense of danger swept over his body. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of a bloody sword light. It was extremely swift and fierce, and would hit him in the blink of an eye. With a flick of his sword, the last blood demon core flew toward the bloody sword light with a whistling sound. Chu Mu quickly turned around and thrust his sword forward. The sword light condensed. With a bang, the blood demon core was shattered by the bloody sword light. Not only was the bloody sword light unhindered, it locked onto Chu Mu's body with incomparable sharpness, intending to stab Chu Mu to death with one strike. The cyan sword light and the bloody sword light collided, producing an ear-piercing sound of metal and countless sparks. The bloody sword light flickered and split into a dozen bloody sword shadows, enveloping Chu Mu from all directions. Chu Mu swung his sword light at an oblique angle. Wherever the dim sword light passed, the bloody sword shadows were shattered, revealing the original bloody sword light. When the two collided, an ear-piercing sound rang out again. His opponent didn't say a word and kept attacking. His swordsmanship surprised Chu Mu. Fast, ruthless, fierce, and indomitable. This was a ferocious man. Each of his sword strikes contained an extremely frightening killing intent. Those with a weak will would be so frightened that they couldn't move, let alone fight back. However, Chu Mu's soul was strong and his sword momentum had reached a small success. This killing intent, which was like killing thousands of soldiers and horses, couldn't shake his mind. It only surprised him. In comparison, Chu Mu's swordsmanship seemed ordinary, but he could always make his opponent's sword strike miss. His swordsmanship seemed to contain everything. This was the level of a grandmaster. The blood-colored sword light was incomparably sharp. Every slash seemed to be able to pierce through the void. Every slash could easily kill a one-mark small blood demon. However, every slash was easily blocked by Chu Mu and counterattacked. Kill! A thunderous shout rang out. Chu Mu only felt the baleful aura increase by several times, almost surpassing his limit. His entire body instantly froze. An extremely condensed blood-red sword light with earth-shattering power had already arrived, and blood-red sword chi was entwined around it. Chu Mu raised his eyelids. His pupils were astonishingly sharp. The muscles on his arms trembled. Innate sword aura poured in layer by layer. The clear wind sword condensed into a cyan star and pierced through the air. The terrifying collision was like a steel plate shattering. The ear-piercing sound made Chu Mu frown. It was as if his eardrums had been pierced. A huge force rushed over. Chu Mu quickly retreated to dissipate the force. His opponent also retreated quickly, increasing the distance between them. Blood demon. Chu Mu finally saw his opponent clearly. He was stunned. No, it doesn't look like a blood demon, but it doesn't look like a human either. Could it be a mutated blood demon? A mutated blood demon knows how to use a sword and has a high level of swordsmanship? Chu Mu's gaze fell on the blood-colored longsword the opponent was pointing at. His pupils shrunk, and he naturally thought of the wounds on the necks of the human swordsman corpses he had seen before. They seemed to match the tip of the blood-colored longsword in front of him. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 222. Long blood-red hair hung down vertically, and it wore a blood-red robe. Its exposed skin was blood-red, and its appearance was completely different from the blood demon's. It looked more like a human. Or it could be said that this guy was like a human wearing the skin of a blood demon. Its entire body emitted a bloodthirsty aura that could shake thousands of soldiers and horses. It forced people into the void and made people tremble in fear. Chu Mu's expression was serious. He pointed the Qingfeng's sword at the other party from a distance. There were 2 lines on the other party's forehead, which were exactly the same as the lines on the little blood demon's forehead. However, Chu Mu also noticed that there was a bronze space bracelet on its left wrist. This strange person's eyes were not black or white. They were red, as if they were overflowing with blood. It was so red that it was shining. Being stared at by those blood-red eyes made people's hair stand on end. It was as if they could hear the wails of thousands of ghosts. Chu Mu's will was unshakable. Any negative emotions that attacked him were all defeated by his sword momentum. They could not affect him at all. Junior, your attainments in swordsmanship have exceeded my expectations. A smile suddenly appeared on the strange person's face. Its voice was obscure, like the tip of a knife cutting through glass. It gave people goosebumps. Are you a human or a blood demon? Chu Mu asked indifferently, full of vigilance. The other party did not answer. Instead, the corner of its mouth curled up, revealing a strange smile. Chu Mu was alert. A blood-red light flashed in front of his eyes. He blocked with his sword. There was an explosion, and sparks flew in all directions. He used his sword to counterattack. He flicked it up like tearing a piece of cloth. The sword aura was condensed, and the sword was swallowing and spitting out light. Its power was astonishing. Your blood must be very delicious. The sinister voice was near and far. It was mixed with an astonishing murderous aura, trying to shake Chu Mu's heart. It was a fatal blow. Chu Mu's expression was as cold as a rock. He blocked the attack and counterattacked. In 3 breaths, a 3-meter forbidden zone was formed. The green cold stars bloomed bit by bit, like a group of bright stars hanging in the sky, and also like meteors falling down, dazzling and enchanting. This strange person's blood-red sword was fast and fierce. Every strike was like a blood-red lightning bolt, but Chu Mu blocked it and counterattacked. Chu Mu stood in place. His sword was like an iron chain blocking the river. No matter how strong the storm was, he would not move. This fellow who looked like both a human and a blood demon, each of his sword strikes contained terrifying power. Not only was it the power of his body, but it also contained a strange blood-type power. Every time Chu Mu's sword clashed with the blood-red longsword, he would feel a wave of evil energy surging towards him. It was like layers upon layers of waves rushing towards his clear-wind sword, attempting to spread to his arm and seep into his body, causing adverse effects. Chu Mu's clear-wind sword slightly vibrated. Under the high-frequency vibrations, it immediately shattered the strange power that was attacking him. The blood-red figure wielding the blood-red sword transformed into countless phantoms that surrounded Chu Mu. Chu Mu struck out with his sword continuously. Those were the phantoms formed by his speed. This is the first time I've seen such terrifying swordsmanship, the blood-red figure thought to himself. He slashed out with his sword again. The arm holding the sword swelled, causing the sword's power to multiply. The blood-red longsword was wrapped with a blood-red energy. This sword strike was still blocked by Chu Mu. A terrifying collision sound rang out and the air exploded. Chu Mu only felt an unimaginably powerful impact. He quickly used a defensive technique to disperse the force. But this force was too sudden and too powerful. Chu Mu had to take 2 steps back to disperse the force. The 3-meter forbidden zone had been broken. The blood-red figure grasped this opportunity to strike out with his sword again. His swollen arm repeatedly waved, and the blood-red long sword revolved around him. The blood-red energy surged, and the air constantly exploded. In front of Chu Mu, hundreds of blood-red sword shadows suddenly shot towards him. No matter if he moved forward, backward, or dodged, Chu Mu felt that the hundreds of blood-red sword shadows would catch up with him. Moreover, the power of each sword was extremely terrifying. It was almost beyond what he could handle. Pulling out his sword with his left hand, he crossed his gold touch sword and clear wind sword in front of him, forming a cross. In the next breath, Chu Mu wielded his sword with both of his hands. He waved his sword and stabbed forward, filling the sky with sword shadows. A series of explosions sounded out. Countless sparks mixed with the blood-red color burst out in the air. It was like fireworks exploding between Chu Mu and the blood-red figure. It was incomparably bright, covering both Chu Mu and the blood-red figure. Dual sword technique. With dual swords in hand, I am invincible. The blood-red figure opened his mouth, and a fist-sized blood-red light ball shot towards Chu Mu like a cannonball. Chu Mu was 100% alert. His body flashed, and he used the phantom steps to dodge the blood-red light ball. At the same time, he appeared beside the blood-red figure and attacked with both of his swords. With a boom, the blood-red light ball blew out a few-meter-deep hole in the ground. Countless pieces of soil splashed out. The blood-red figure fiercely chopped at Chu Mu with his sword, drawing a blood-red light in the air. It was extremely shocking. Both of his swords pointed out continuously, hitting the same spot on the blood-red light ball. The sword tip vibrated at a high frequency, and the blood-red light ball immediately shattered in the middle. In terms of power, Chu Mu knew that he was far inferior to this strange blood-red figure. He could only use his unfathomable dual sword technique to deal with it, and thus gain the upper hand. With both swords in hand, Chu Mu's power increased by another 30%. With one sword attacking and one sword defending, the 2 swords defending turned into 2 swords attacking. The changes happened as he wished, as if it was his own instinct. With both swords in hand, he immediately disrupted the blood-red figure's attack rhythm, turning the rhythm into his own. He gradually gained the upper hand. Chu Mu attacked with his swords, becoming more and more relaxed. One of his swords seemed to be an attack, but he suddenly turned and knocked away the blood-red long sword. The other sword slashed at the figure unexpectedly, causing the figure to retreat in horror. What a strange pair of swords! The blood-red figure thought to himself. A hint of fear flashed through his blood-red eyes. This blood demon doppelganger of mine can't cultivate sword chi. It only has the blood power of a small blood demon. Unless it can break through to become a great blood demon, it can't display its power in the form of sword chi like a swordsman. Even so, this blood demon doppelganger of mine is still powerful. It can surpass a swordsman at the peak of the initial stage of chi transformation, and is comparable to a Deshang swordsman. Coupled with my swordsmanship, I can even kill a Deshang swordsman. But I can't do anything to this junior who is only at the beginning stage of chi transformation. If this person can be used by me, once his cultivation increases with his unfathomable swordsmanship, he can definitely become my right-hand man and help me conquer the world. Chu Mu didn't know what the blood-red figure was thinking. He only felt that the other party's attack had paused, and seemed to have weakened. How could Chu Mu let go of such an opportunity? His 2 swords changed and moved unpredictably. It was extremely dangerous. With 2 slashing sounds, the clothes on the other party's chest were cut open. The other party reacted quickly and hurriedly dodged. Chu Mu's sword couldn't cut open the other party's chest to attack the heart. It only cut the skin on the other party's chest, but no blood flowed out. It was as if all the blood in his body was locked inside. In the next breath, the 2 wounds healed miraculously. This is clearly the ability of a blood demon. Chu Mu's heart trembled. He increasingly felt that the fellow in front of him was a blood demon, but there were many differences between them. Chu Mu found it hard to believe that a blood demon had mutated into such a form. Damn it! If it weren't for the fact that this doppelganger has yet to comprehend 40% of the essence of blood, I could easily defeat this junior with the demonic blood swordsmanship. The blood-red figure was secretly furious. He was very certain that even though this junior's attainments in swordsmanship were extremely shocking, and his dual swordsmanship had shocked him to no end, if it was his true body, even if he suppressed his cultivation to the initial chi transformation stage, he would still be able to easily defeat and kill this junior. However, while the blood demon doppelganger had many benefits, it also had many inconveniences. These inconveniences wouldn't be a hindrance under normal circumstances, but when faced with a difficult opponent like this junior, they became weaknesses. He couldn't defeat him after a long battle. While the blood-red figure was shocked, Chu Mu was also surprised. He had already used his dual swordsmanship, but he still only had a slight upper hand and couldn't kill his opponent. If the opponent is a blood demon, his endurance must be many times greater than mine. A prolonged battle is disadvantageous to me, Chu Mu said to himself. He thought that he had to seize the opportunity to severely injure his opponent. Both sides had their own thoughts. The blood-red figure's killing intent towards Chu Mu weakened, and he was thinking about how to defeat Chu Mu and capture Chu Mu. They swam like 2 dragons on the ground, colliding, attacking, and looking for weaknesses. This junior is too difficult to deal with. With my current strength, it's not enough to defeat and capture him. In the end, the blood-red figure had to admit this and wanted to retreat. Other than him, there are other swordsmen and many minor blood demons in the blood demon realm. I'll come and find him after my strength increases to that of a 3-striped minor blood demon. He slashed his sword diagonally, and a blood-red waterfall swept across the sky with a terrifying force. The blood-red figure flew back and quickly turned around, intending to leave. Good chance. Chu Mu's eyelids trembled, and his pupils shone with a terrifying light. His body swayed, avoiding the blood-red waterfall, and instantly appeared behind his opponent. He stood firmly on the ground with his feet apart, like an unshakable mountain. The golden sword was already in its scabbard. He leaned to one side, and the clear wind sword was held horizontally in front of his eyes. It was vast and majestic, and its sharpness was endless. The blood-red figure's body trembled unconsciously. He felt that he was locked down by an extremely terrifying aura. This aura was like a mountain pressing down on him, and there were countless sharpness on his body. The sword aura was poured into the clear wind sword. The clear wind sword trembled uncontrollably, making a buzzing sound that made one's scalp tingle. An invisible but extremely terrifying force gathered on the clear wind sword. Prison-breaking sword. It was impossible to describe how stunning and brilliant this sword was. Although it did not look as gorgeous as the colorful lights, nor as magnificent as the sword chi, the invisible sword aura condensed from the sword aura was like a meteor that crossed the universe. It made the sun and the moon dim, and the world lose its color. Fast, too fierce, too fierce. Just as the blood-red figure realized that something was wrong and escaped from the sword aura's lock, the sword had already arrived. There was no way to dodge, and there was no way to dodge. The prison-breaking sword pierced through from the left side of his back like a shooting star. The horrifying power poured out, and the blood-red figure seemed to have heard the sound of his own heart breaking. In the next second, the attack started from his heart, and his entire body turned into dust under the horrifying power of the sword. The space within 3 meters was also invaded, and the ground was shattered into countless pieces. He did not even have the chance to say his last threat before he died completely. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 223. Blood splattered across the sky and dyed the earth red. The blood-red longsword flew dozens of meters away and landed on the ground with a clang. The bronze spatial wristband flew to the other side. Chumu's green robe was stained with blood because he didn't try to dodge. Exhaustion spread from his soul to his body. Chumu's face was somewhat pale. After breaking through to the Chi transformation realm, his body had been tempered by spiritual energy and had the effect of being reborn. His soul had also been strengthened and became more powerful. However, his sword aura had also increased from novice to minor success. The amount of energy, and spirit required to use the sword aura had multiplied. In order to produce a fatal blow, Chumu didn't hold back at all. Prison-breaking sword. This was the first time Chumu had used the prison-breaking sword against an enemy after comprehending it. The effect was astonishing. The powerful sword aura first locked onto the enemy and then killed with a single strike, completely destroying the enemy. Picking up the bronze spatial wristband and putting it away, Chumu sat down cross-legged. He needed to rest for a while and recover his energy to peak condition. Otherwise, in a place like the Blood Demon Realm, he would easily fall into danger if he didn't have enough energy. The strength of his soul didn't just improve Chumu's 5 senses. It also had a unique effect on the natural recovery of his energy, and spirit. It was several times faster than ordinary people. About an hour later, Chumu's face was no longer as pale. His energy, and spirit had recovered quite a bit. However, it would still take some time for him to fully recover. Closing his eyes to rest, Chumu divided part of his attention to pay attention to the surroundings, in case any human swordsman or small blood demons approached. In the Blood Demon Realm, the enemies of swordsmen were small blood demons, but they could also be swordsmen. For the sake of benefits, everything else could be ignored. Although Chumu really wanted to see what was inside the bronze spatial wristband and the space inside, the most important thing right now was to recover. He had to recover his energy as soon as possible before he could proceed to the next step. Another 2 hours passed. Although his essence, energy, and spirit had not recovered to their peak, they were not far from it. They would not hinder Chumu's movements in any way. First, Chumu grabbed the long and narrow blood-red sword. As soon as he grabbed the hilt, the blood-red sword seemed to come alive. There was a blood-red light fluctuating on the sword, and at the same time, an evil force attacked Chumu's palm, trying to penetrate into his body. He channeled the sword aura to his palm and clashed with the evil power of the blood-red longsword, destroying it. However, the evil power regrouped and attacked again. Although he didn't know what would happen if this evil energy seeped into his body, it definitely wouldn't be anything good. He loosened his grip, and the blood-red sword fell to the ground. The evil power had lost its source, and was completely destroyed by Chumu's sword chi. After staring at the blood-red sword for a while, Chumu withdrew his gaze and took out the bronze space wristband. Middle-grade space armlet. As he spoke, he cut his finger with his fingernail and squeezed out a drop of blood on the bronze space armlet. Guided by the blood, Chumu's spirit penetrated into the space armlet. "Junior, you killed my doppelganger and even tried to take my space armlet. Damn it!" A deafening roar was heard, and immediately, a sharp light approached, trying to tear Chumu's spirit apart. Although surprised, Chumu did not panic. He condensed his spirit into a sword and slashed. Inside the bronze space armlet, the two spirit swords clashed with each other. It was neither flashy nor powerful, but it was extremely dangerous. If Chumu lost, his spirit would be damaged, and it would take a long time for him to recover. If Chumu won, his opponent's spirit would be damaged, and the middle-grade space armlet would belong to Chumu. Once a battle on the spirit level began, there was no way to retreat. Otherwise, one would be pursued, and the chances of being damaged would be greater. The root of spirit power was the soul. If the soul was strong enough, the spirit would be stronger. In the void, the two spirit swords clashed continuously, using the spirit swords to perform swordsmanship. Chu Mu's attainments as a swordsmanship master played a huge role once again, but his opponent's spirit sword was also very powerful. It was as if it had broken free from some kind of restraint and was performing to its heart's content. With a flash of light, Chu Mu's spirit sword split into two. He used his spirit to perform the dual sword technique, attacking left and right. His attack and defense were constantly changing. Dual swords again. His opponent was shocked and angry. Under Chu Mu's dual sword technique, he began to fall into a disadvantage. Junior, I, Lord Blood Fury, will not let you go. Leaving behind a final threat, his opponent's spirit sword was shattered by Chu Mu and completely disappeared. At the same time, somewhere in the Great Kuan dynasty, the blood-red figure sitting cross-legged trembled and unconsciously spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was slightly pale, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. How dare you kill my Lord Blood Fury's doppelganger? Junior, no matter who you are, I will definitely find you and suck your blood dry to vent the hatred in my heart. A voice that made one's hair stand on end sounded. A terrifying blood-red aura swept out in all directions like a storm. Wherever it passed, the grass, trees, sand, and stones within a few thousand meters were all crushed into powder. Lord Blood Fury. Holding the bronze space bracelet, Chu Mu was deep in thought. So that sword-wielding blood demon was a doppelganger of Lord Blood Fury. How many doppelgangers like this were there? Most importantly, what realm was this Lord Blood Fury's cultivation base? Unable to figure it out, Chu Mu put it aside for the time being. Following his spirit, his mind spread into the bronze space bracelet and carefully checked it. As expected, it was a middle-grade space bracelet. The internal space was 10 times larger than his black iron space bracelet. It was exactly 10 cubic meters. Within this 10 cubic meters of space, there were many things stored in an orderly manner. It was more convenient for Chu Mu to check. The first thing that caught Chu Mu's attention was a pile of irregular blood-red balls the size of longans. Those were blood demon nuclei. There are at least a few hundred of them. Chu Mu was secretly surprised. After checking, he found a total of 930 blood demon nuclei. Not only were there 1-striped and 2-striped blood demon nuclei, but there were also 3-striped blood demon nuclei. There were even a few 4-striped blood demon nuclei. The 3-striped blood demon nuclei came from 3-striped small blood demons, while the 4-striped blood demon nuclei came from 4-striped small blood demons. With Chu Mu's current strength, he could easily kill a 1-striped small blood demon. Dealing with a 2-striped small blood demon wouldn't be too difficult either. As for the 3-striped small blood demon, Chu Mu didn't have much confidence. As for the 4-striped small blood demon, unless he used the prison-breaking sword, he would have to run as far away as possible. There are 10 4-striped blood demon nuclei, 83 striped blood demon nuclei, and more than 600 2-striped blood demon nuclei. The rest are all 1-striped blood demon nuclei. If I bring them back to the Sword Mansion, I can exchange them for hundreds of thousands of credits. In addition to the blood demon nuclei I obtained earlier, I still have time to continue hunting small blood demons. Maybe I can get 200,000 credits from this trip to the blood demon territory. Chu Mu couldn't help but feel a little excited. In addition, a low-grade spatial bracelet is worth 1 million credits. Although I don't know how many mid-grade spatial bracelets are worth, they shouldn't be less than 5 million credit. If necessary, I can sell the low-grade spatial bracelet. Even if it's not worth 1 million credits, it should be worth at least a few 100,000 credit. After checking the blood demon nuclei, Chu Mu continued to check the other things in the mid-grade spatial bracelet. A stone the size of an egg appeared in Chumu's hand. The stone was light red and its surface was very rough, like a rock. It seemed to contain a strange evil power and was filled with an astonishing evil aura. When Chumu held it in his hand, the evil aura rushed straight into his soul, making him bloodthirsty and crazy. His powerful soul force condensed into a sword and directly cut down the evil aura that rushed into his mind. It wasn't affected in the slightest. Is this the so-called blood evil stone? Chumu thought to himself. There were 21 such stones in the spatial bracelet. Among them, 15 were the light red ones, 5 were the size of a goose egg, and 1 was the size of a dark red fist. The evil aura contained in the red stone was even more intense and astonishing. It was 2 or 3 times stronger than the light red stone. The evil aura contained in the dark red stone was even more terrifying. It was several times stronger than the red stone. Traces of blood-colored air currents could be seen jumping on the stone's surface like electric arcs. When Chumu swept his gaze over the dark red stone, he could feel that the terrifyingly dense evil aura would impact his soul and cause negative effects. If this is a blood evil stone, then I can get a lot of credits, Chumu thought to himself. According to the group mission, a low-grade blood evil stone could be exchanged for 50,000 credits, and a mid-grade blood evil stone could be exchanged for 500,000 credit. Although he wasn't very clear if this stone was really a blood evil stone, then the light red stone could very well be a low-grade one, the red stone could very well be a mid-grade one, and the dark red stone could very well be a high-grade one. In other words, 15 low-grade blood evil stones could be exchanged for 750,000 credits, and 5 mid-grade blood evil stones could be exchanged for 5 million credits. As for the high-grade blood evil stone, it was unknown how many credits it could be exchanged for. It should be at least in the millions. Within the mid-grade spatial bracelet, next to the blood evil stones, there was something that looked very much like a blood evil stone. However, when Chumu took one out and examined it carefully, he discovered that it wasn't a blood evil stone. Compared to a blood evil stone, this egg-sized object wasn't as rough and didn't have any evil aura surrounding it. When he held it in his hand, it felt warm and cool. It seemed a little soft, but when he squeezed it hard, he couldn't crush it. Could it be? A thought flashed through Chumu's mind. Blood essence. This object felt like it was condensed from countless drops of blood. If he carefully sensed it, he could feel the astonishing blood energy fluctuations within. The mission mentioned the exchange of credits between blood evil stones and blood essences. A low-grade blood essence can be exchanged for 100,000 credits, and a mid-grade blood essence can be exchanged for 1 million credit. Its value is double that of a blood evil stone. Chumu sucked in a breath of cold air. There are a total of 6 blood essences in this spatial bracelet. 4 of them are light red and the other 2 are pure red. Perhaps they are the so-called low-grade and mid-grade. If these were really blood evil stones and blood essences, Chumu could be considered to have reaped a great harvest this time. However, whether it was true or not, he would have to wait until he returned to the Sword Mansion to confirm. Apart from the blood demon core, blood evil stones, and blood essences, there were only 2 things in the entire spatial bracelet. These 2 things made Chumu's heart tremble. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 224. Something appeared in Chumu's hand. It was a red gourd the size of a palm. After opening it, a sweet and fishy smell wafted out. Inside the gourd was a red pill the size of a longan core, rolling in his palm. It should be a pill similar to the scarlet blood pill, but the medicinal power it contains seems to be even stronger than that of the scarlet blood pill, Chumu said to himself. His powerful soul force allowed him to detect details that others could not. There were more than 20 pills in the gourd. Chumu put the stopper back into his space wristband and took out another item. This item was somewhat familiar to him, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Whether it was the patterns on it or the strange fluctuations, Chu Mu suddenly recalled the picture scroll in the secret chamber of the Chu family. The picture scroll of wind. Although I didn't gain anything from my second attempt at comprehending the picture scroll of wind, I received some vague information that there are 7 other pictures similar to the picture scroll of wind, Chu Mu said to himself. Could it be that this is one of the other 7? Chu Mu couldn't help but have this thought, because the item in his hand was too similar to the picture scroll of wind that he had seen before. Suddenly, he had the urge to open it, but on second thought, he restrained himself. If it was really something similar to the picture scroll of wind, once it was opened, fluctuations would definitely spread out, and Chu Mu might also enter a state similar to when he had comprehended the picture scroll of wind. In that state, he wouldn't know what was approaching him. The blood demon realm was not a safe place. It was not even safe. After putting the picture scroll of wind back into his space wristband, Chu Mu transferred all the blood demon cores, pills, and spirit stones from his low-grade space wristband into his middle-grade space wristband, and then stuffed the low-grade space wristband into his clothes. In fact, putting the low-grade space wristband into the middle-grade space wristband was the best way to do it, and Chu Mu also wanted to do so. But that wouldn't work. Every space bracelet had an internal space. No matter how big or small it was an independent internal space. Once a space wristband was put into another space wristband, the internal space would reject it. The final result of the rejection would be the collapse of one of the internal spaces, which meant that the space wristband would be destroyed. That was what the book said. Chu Mu would not try to verify the authenticity of this statement. For him, whether it was a middle-grade or low-grade space bracelet, they were all very precious. It would be stupid to destroy any of them. Finally, Chu Mu picked up the long and narrow blood-red sword and put it into his space bracelet. According to Chu Mu's judgment, this blood-red sword should be a middle-grade sword. After tidying everything up, Chu Mu looked up into the distance and muttered to himself, "Next, I'll continue to hone my swordsmanship." The dim sword light pierced through the void. There was no blood splashing, but the chest of a 2-striped blood demon was cut open. Its heart was pierced and minced. It died without even a scream. Swish, swish, swish. Every move seemed simple, and the sword light condensed on each sword was dimmer than before. However, its power was very amazing. Even the skin of the 2-striped blood demon was not tough enough to resist. It was cut open and killed in one strike. Compared to before, Chu Mu's sword was more concise and fierce. The sharpness began to be restrained, and the momentum and fluctuations caused by the sword became weaker. The sword was a weapon of murder, and swordsmanship was the art of killing. This was the path that Chu Mu walked when he comprehended the path of a swordsmanship grandmaster. In the past, he did have the attainments of a swordsmanship grandmaster, but his real swordsmanship had not reached the level that a swordsmanship grandmaster should have. It was like a bucket that had reached a height of 1 meter, but the water inside had not reached a height of 1 meter. It had not reached its limit. Chu Mu had reached the level of a swordsmanship grandmaster on his own. In the absence of further progress and guidance, he had to figure out everything on his own. However, after reaching the level of a grandmaster, every bit of progress was very difficult, not to mention that he had to figure out everything on his own without any guidance. It was even more difficult. After many life-and-death battles in the blood demon realm, during which he had slain countless little blood demons with his sword, he had been improving non-stop through the actual slaughtering, pouring water into the bucket. Now, Chu Mu had finally reached his current limit. Not only did he have the theoretical knowledge of a swordsmanship grandmaster, he also had the level of swordsmanship that a swordsmanship grandmaster should have. He knew everything about a swordsmanship grandmaster, and was no longer limited to a corner like before. I have a feeling that I will make another breakthrough in my swordsmanship before the end of the blood demon realm, Chu Mu thought to himself. His eyes were glittering, and he was absolutely confident. On the dark red, boundless land, a person was running as if he were flying. With one step, he would cover 7 to 8 meters. With another step, he would cover another 7 to 8 meters. He was so fast that even the most agile cheetah could not compare to him. As the person flew past quickly, the air was filled with the smell of blood. There was also a murderous aura spreading out, which was left after killing too many little blood demons. 3 one-striped little blood demons appeared not far away. When they saw that it was a human, they were very excited and cried out in joy. But then, they sensed the terrifying murderous aura around the human, which seemed to be filled with the resentment of many little blood demons before they died. They wailed and cried out in pain. The 3 one-striped little blood demons came to a halt. They were extremely frightened. They hurriedly flapped the small wings on their backs and turned around to flee. Although they were very ferocious, the murderous aura emanating from the human told them that at least hundreds of little blood demons had died by his sword. It was enough to scare them out of their wit. The person who was running away also noticed the 3 one-striped little blood demons that had turned around. A blood-red light flashed in his eyes. He slightly adjusted his direction and suddenly increased his speed, like a gust of wind. With a swoosh, the dark green sword light swept across the sky like a meteor. The sword light flashed and turned into 3 dark green cold stars. Each of them carried a wisp of innate sword chi. They pierced through the backs of the 3 one-striped little blood demons and strangled them to death. The figure flew past. Before the 3 one-striped little blood demons fell to the ground, he flicked his sword, and 3 blood demon cores immediately flew up. His left hand stroked the air, and the 3 blood demon cores disappeared. The figure left, and the corpses of the 3 one-striped little blood demons fell to the ground and rapidly shriveled up. Chu Mu's use of the wind concept was becoming smoother and smoother. He only used 20% of the wind concept to perform the gust of wind, and only consumed a little of his own sword chi. He was able to maintain such a high speed and fly for a long time. He killed any 1-striped or 2-striped little blood demons he encountered during his flight. Right now, compared to before I entered the blood demon realm, although my cultivation hasn't improved, my overall strength is a lot stronger, thought Chu Mu. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 225. The 6 small blood devils roared and surrounded the 6 human swordsmen. The 6 human swordsmen faced the blood devils back to back, holding swords in their hands. The 6 small blood devils were all 1-vein and 2-vein blood devils. 4 of the 6 swordsmen were at the entry level of Qi and 2 were at the initial level of Qi. In terms of strength and numbers, the small blood devils were on par with the human swordsmen. Chuha, attack that small blood devil. Try your best to stop it from coming closer. Su Jianfeng, attack that small blood devil. Try your best to stop it from coming closer. One of the swordsmen who had reached the initial level of Qi commanded calmly. You too, try your best to stop the small blood devils from coming closer. You and I will attack together. We must kill this 2-vein blood devil with 1 strike. The battle began again. The small blood devils were extremely fierce. They roared and pounced, leaving cold marks in the air with their bloody claws. The 6 human swordsmen were not to be trifled with either. They cooperated with each other to fight the small blood devils. The small blood devils had extremely strong vitality. They could not be killed without destroying their hearts. However, they did not have much intelligence. They only knew how to charge and kill based on instinct. The human swordsmen did not have the terrifying vitality of the small blood devils. Once they were scratched by a small blood devil, they would bleed non-stop. However, they had sword chi, swordsmanship, and intelligence. As long as they used it properly, they could fight and even kill the small blood devils. However, it was very difficult for the 6 of them to kill the 6 small blood devils. Damn it, I've been scratched, one of the swordsmen roared in shock and anger. Hurry up and use the golden healing pill and scarlet blood pill to shrink the wound and replenish the blood loss, another swordsman said hurriedly. No, the scarlet blood pill can't produce blood faster than the blood loss. The swordsman roared. He felt his condition weakening bit by bit. His limbs started to feel weak. That was a sign that he had lost too much blood. After being scratched by a small blood devil, the wound could not heal in a short period of time. Even the golden healing pill could only heal a part of it. Unless they used a pill of a higher level, they could only endure it. However, it was clear that the blood loss was too fast, and the scarlet blood pill's replenishment simply couldn't keep up. The smell of fresh blood stimulated the small blood demons to become even crazier. They charged forward fearlessly. Soon, 2 swordsmen were killed by the small blood devils, while the human swordsmen also killed 2 small blood devils. Are we going to die here? Chu He and Su Jianfeng were extremely unwilling to give up. It had not been easy for them to enter the Sword Manor's inner mansion for further training. This time, they had entered the Blood Demon realm in hopes of obtaining Blood Demon cores and other items to exchange for credits so that they could exchange them for a sword technique they had taken a fancy to. However, the Blood Demon realm was more dangerous than they had imagined. There had been 12 of them in the team, but now only 6 of them were left. The other 6 had all been killed by the little blood demon, and their blood had been sucked dry by the little blood demon. Now 2 more people had been sucked dry by a 2-striped blood demon and died. There was only 1 2-striped blood demon and 3 1-striped blood demons left. On Chu He's side, there was only 1 initial success swordsman and 3 novice swordsmen left. After the 2-striped blood demon had absorbed the blood of a novice swordsman and a novice swordsman, a bloody light swam all over its body. Its killing intent was even fiercer than a human's. 4 against 4. Raise your confidence. We can definitely kill them all. The last swordsman of the initial success swordsman took a deep breath. However, he himself did not have much confidence. In a one-on-one battle between a small blood demon and a human swordsman of the same level, unless the swordsman's sword technique was extremely exquisite and could destroy the small blood demon's heart as quickly as possible, the human swordsman would most likely die in the long battle. However, there were very few swordsmen who could pierce the small blood demon's heart with one strike. The battle began again. The 2-striped blood demon that had absorbed the blood of 2 swordsmen was abnormally strong. Not only was it faster, but it was also more powerful than before. After a bloody battle, another entry-level Chi swordsman was caught by the 2-striped blood demon and sent flying backwards. Its fangs pierced deeply into the entry-level Chi swordsman's neck, sucking his blood dry as he struggled. Suddenly, a terrifying force erupted from the 2-striped blood demon's body. Everyone heard a loud, drum-like sound. The left side of the 2-striped blood demon's chest suddenly protruded. It was as if its heart was beating so violently that it was about to burst out of its chest. Then, a terrifying killing intent exploded from the 2-striped blood demon's body. It spread out in all directions and created a storm. The 3 1-striped blood demons retreated in fear. However, the 2-striped blood demon flashed past them and crushed their heads. It took out their blood demon cores and threw them into its mouth. This small blood demon. The remaining 3 swordsmen widened their eyes and retreated. Their instincts told them that the small blood demon before them was undergoing some terrifying transformation. Run! The novice swordsman shouted and hurriedly retreated. Chu He and Su Jianfeng also retreated quickly. If they didn't leave now, when would they? At the same time, the 2-striped little blood demon's body suddenly swelled, and the sound of flesh tearing could be heard. The little blood demon, who was originally only 2 to 1, 3 meters tall, suddenly grew to 6 to 1, 7 meters tall. Its originally thin and weak body also swelled with muscles, and one could tell at a glance that it contained an astonishing amount of power. The originally thin and weak blood demon had now transformed into a strong and powerful blood demon, Mr. Bodybuilder. Mutation. A two-striped mutated blood demon was equivalent to an ordinary three-striped blood demon. The wings on its back flapped and it took a step forward. The mutated blood demon was extremely fast. It turned into a blood-red bolt of lightning and rushed toward Chu-He and the other two. Kill it! The novice swordsman looked back and saw the speed of the small blood demon. He knew that the three of them couldn't escape at all. He turned around and shouted. Only by killing the small blood demon could they be safe. Chu-He and Su Jianfeng also understood this. The three of them slashed out innate sword chi like a tornado. At this time, they couldn't hold back their sword chi anymore. Puff, puff, puff. The Xiantian sword chi slashed at the two-striped mutated blood fiend's body, but only left a faint mark on its skin that disappeared in the blink of an eye, unable to cause any harm to it. The small blood demon flew over and opened its sharp claws. Its speed was unbelievably fast. It tore through the air and grabbed at the novice swordsman. It was too fast for him to react. Under the claw, no matter how hard he tried to block it, he couldn't. His chest was directly torn open. The huge force sent him flying backward. Blood spurted out like a fountain. The swordsman's chest had 3 deep wounds that stretched across his entire chest. He couldn't get up after landing. His limbs twitched and he struggled. Death was only a matter of time. Chu-He and Su Jianfeng's faces turned pale. Even a swordsman who had achieved initial success in chi transformation could not block the claws of this terrifying little blood demon. With their strength, only death awaited them if they faced this little blood demon. Human, be obedient and offer your blood. The mutated blood demon felt very good. This feeling of great power made it very satisfied. Chu-He and Su Jianfeng looked at each other. Their expressions became determined. They couldn't escape. They could only fight. Even if they couldn't, they had to fight. At this moment, a strong murderous aura spread over from afar. Then, the sound of wind breaking rang out, and a figure flew over. The small blood demon, Chu-He, and Su Jianfeng all noticed the newcomer and looked over at the same time. Two-striped small blood demon. I'll use you to test my current strength. Chu Mu's eyes flashed. Earlier, he and Liang Haishan were exhausted from running away from a 4-striped small blood demon. In the end, if Han Ruoxue hadn't appeared and killed the small blood demon in 3 moves, Chu Mu would have died under its sharp claws and his blood would have been sucked dry. Now, he encountered another small blood demon. It was 2-striped small blood demon, which was equivalent to an ordinary 3-striped small blood demon. Chu Mu was not afraid. I've already figured out my path to become a swordsmanship master. I've also completely grasped the theories and swordsmanship attainments of a swordsmanship master. Now, I'm at the peak of the beginner level of swordsmanship master. I'm only 1 step away from the small success level. Chu Mu said to himself as he sped up. His essence, chi, and spirit condensed into one. He clenched the sword in his hand. Now, I've comprehended the small success level of swordsmanship master. 2-striped small blood demon, I'll use your life as a sacrifice to the level I've comprehended and the new sword move I've mastered. More than 30 meters away, Chu Mu drew his sword. The sword moved along with his straight body and pierced through the void in a straight line. The attack was aimed at the heart of the mutated blood demon. As the sword pierced out, countless sword light flashed. The countless sword light condensed into one in an instant and condensed on the Qinfeng sword. The sword light was so dazzling that no one dared to look directly at it. In a flash, the dazzling sword light became less dazzling. It was just a little dazzling. At this moment, the sword was less than 10 meters away from the small blood demon's heart. The dazzling sword light quickly dimmed like a light bulb that had been turned off. The dazzling sword light became dim. Chu-He and Su Jianfeng could now look directly at it. They suddenly felt their hair stand on end. The dim sword light was even more terrifying than the dazzling sword light. 1 meter. The dim sword light was completely silent. It became dark, deep, and extremely condensed. The small blood demon felt a great threat. It tore the sky apart with its claws. The sky was filled with claw shadows that surged toward Chu Mu, as if they wanted to tear Chu Mu into countless pieces of flesh and blood. However, under the dim sword, the innate sword chi surged. The claw shadows burst like bubbles and disappeared. The sword pierced straight into the small blood demon's extremely tough skin and went straight for its heart. The innate sword chi burst forth and strangled it. The two-striped small blood demon's strong heart was instantly crushed by the innate sword chi. Its entire body lost its vitality and died. The sword light was dim, but its power was terrifying. It was a fatal blow. The two-striped small blood demon was dead. Chu He and Su Jianfeng were saved. When they saw the person who had come, they were overwhelmed with shock and could not suppress the palpitations in their hearts. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 226. Is he really Chu Mu? Is he really the disciple from the Li Province Sword Academy who is only at the peak of the 10th stage? That's right, he's really Chu Mu. I didn't expect this. Not long ago we could kill an ant with a casual swing of the sword. In the blink of an eye, he surpassed us without us noticing. Now, if he wants to kill us, he can probably kill us with a casual swing of the sword. What an unimaginable swing of the sword! No matter what, he's still a member of the Chu family. It's your family's fortune to have such a freak like him. Su Jianfeng was extremely emotional. A person like him shouldn't be feeling this way, but everything was just too shocking. Chu He's cheeks twitched a few times. Compared to Su Jianfeng, he felt even more complicated. Not only was he shocked, but even he couldn't describe what he was feeling. Chu He was originally the number one in the Chu family. He had been known as a genius since he was young. With the halo of a genius, he had even entered a high-grade sword sect as a disciple and quickly stood out. Compared to him, Chu Mu was like a loach in a river and a flood dragon that could overturn rivers and seas. He was already very surprised to see Chu Mu at the Li Province Sword Academy, not to mention that Chu Mu had been able to enter the Sword Mansion as one of the top 100 in the Sword Academy. Before entering the Blood Demon realm, when he saw Chu Mu again, he was shocked. It turned out that Chu Mu had already entered the Inner Mansion. Now, he had been saved by Chu Mu. He had seen the terrifying blood demon that could kill a swordsman at the initial success stage of the Qi transformation realm with one claw, but Chu Mu had killed it with one swing of the sword. That kind of shock could no longer be described with words. At that moment, he felt as if his heart was about to stop beating. The blood demon core of a two-striped mutated blood demon is different from that of an ordinary two-striped blood demon. Chu Mu pinched a blood demon core in his fingers. There were also two lines on it, but an ordinary blood demon core was red, while this mutated blood demon core was dark red. The blood power contained within was even more obscure and majestic. After storing the blood demon core into his space bracelet, Chu Mu pondered over the dark sword. When it comes to swordsmanship, a swordsmanship apprentice only grasps the basic swordsmanship and practices it to a proficient level. On the other hand, a swordsman cultivates the basic swordsmanship to the point where it's almost instinctive and wields the sword as if it's his own arm. When you become a true sword master, you will be able to wield the sword light. In the beginning, the sword light doesn't have much power. It can only affect the opponent's vision and make them misjudge. The improvement after using the sword light is to gather the sword light on the sword, which will slightly increase the power of the sword. Although it is not very obvious, the gathered sword light will be very dazzling. In an instant, it will cause the opponent to be unable to look straight at it, thus seizing the initiative. After the improvement, the sword light will no longer be dazzling. It will only be somewhat dazzling and will no longer affect the opponent's vision. However, the power of the sword will be significantly increased by at least 10% because of the gathering of the dazzling sword light. After that, The sword light will no longer be dazzling or dazzling. It will even become somewhat dim. At this time, the power of the sword will be increased by at least 20% because of the dim sword light. After the dim sword light, the sword light will be more condensed and restrained. It will become dark and profound. The dim sword light will increase the power of the sword by 30%, which will be more obvious. After the slaughter in the blood demon territory, I have finally understood the essence of being a sword master. I can now divide the sword light into several levels: sword light, gathering light, condensing light, and dim light. They correspond to the sword light produced when the sword light is gathered on the sword. The sword light will become condensed and dazzling, the sword light will become dim, and the sword light will become dark and profound. The 5 levels, one after another, represent the improvement of one's swordsmanship. It is a very straightforward way to divide them. The sword light, gathering light and condensing light are at the level of sword master, while the dim light and dim light are at the level of sword master. The dim light belongs to the entry level of sword master, while the dim light belongs to the initial level of sword master. After a period of slaughter, I have understood the essence of being a sword master. After summing up all my understandings, I can perform the dim sword and reach the level of dim light. Now, my swordsmanship is at the initial level of sword master. However, I have just stepped into the threshold of the initial level of sword master. When I can perform the dim light casually without any prelude, it means that I am firmly in the initial level of sword master and qualified to become a sword master, Deshang. If I can completely master the dim sword and integrate it into every sword move, the power of the sword moves will be significantly improved. If my division is correct, then after the dim light there should be no light. It's not really no light, but all of the sword light is restrained and extremely condensed on the sword. Because it's too condensed, there's no sword light leaking out. It looks like there's no light. I have to continue to work hard. Chu-Mu looked into the distance. His gaze became incomparably resolute and a sharp glint shot out. A dazzling sword light flickered. It became bright, then dim, and finally dark and deep. The sword, mixed with a wisp of innate sword chi, directly broke the left chest of a 3-striped blood demon and crushed its heart. The little 3-striped blood demon died without even a scream. Not enough. Chu-Mu shook off the blood on the tip of his sword and frowned slightly. When Chu-Mu killed the 2-mark mutated small blood demon, he started from the sword light, went through the gathering light, condensing light, and dark light before finally entering the serene light. Although the speed was extremely fast, only a short 1 or 2 breaths of time, it still required a process. The blood demon did not have much intelligence and was not afraid of death. Therefore, it could not judge the situation and make the most correct response like a human swordsman. If the sword was aimed at a human swordsman, he would most likely have to dodge. A few breaths was enough for an expert. Therefore, Chu-Mu tried his best to perform the dim sword perfectly and save the previous process. After killing more than a dozen blood demons, Chu-Mu finally saved the first step, but there were still 3 steps that he had to skip. Kill, kill, kill. Killing intent surrounded Chu-Mu. The traces of red made him look extremely ferocious, like an Azura. His sword was the Azura's sword, killing everything. One by one, the blood demons died under Chu-Mu's sword. Until now, Chu-Mu did not know how many blood demons he had killed. Maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe 200, maybe more. The number of blood demon nuclei in the space bracelet kept increasing. The credits that Chu-Mu could exchange for were also increasing. The efficiency of killing was extremely high, and the effect was excellent. Whether it was a 1-striped or 2-striped blood demon, they could no longer pose any threat to Chu-Mu. Even a 3-striped blood demon would become a ghost under Chu-Mu's sword if it was alone. Blood demons were really a very strange life form. One could think of them as very strong or very weak. Even if one's strength was not as strong as theirs, As long as one could avoid their attacks or break their tough skin before they attacked, as long as one could hit their heart, their only weakness, they would be very weak. On the other hand, if one could not break their skin and hit their heart, their only weakness, as soon as one was scratched, even if one's strength was higher than the blood demons, death would be the only outcome. Chu-Mu never killed 4-striped or 5-striped blood demons. Once he saw one from a distance, he would make a prompt decision to turn around and run, never giving the other party a chance to do so. This was because Chu-Mu had encountered a lone 4-mark small blood demon before. He discovered that although his vision sword was able to clearly capture the opponent's rapid movements, and was able to capture its trajectory to strike the left side of its chest, the gloomy sword wrapped in innate sword aura was unable to break through the 4-mark small blood demon's skin defense, let alone shatter its heart. Unless Chu-Mu had a middle-grade sword, perhaps only with the sharpness of a middle-grade sword could he break it. Otherwise, he would have to use the prison-breaking sword. The prison-breaking sword consumed too much energy, so Chu-Mu could only use it as a trump card instead of a regular method. Perhaps one day, he would be able to use the prison-breaking sword casually, but not now. Involuntarily, Chu-Mu recalled Han Ruoshue's stunning sword move, which was full of charm. The combination of the snow essence and the minor success sword momentum. Logically speaking, Han Ruoshue's soul power could not be higher than Chu-Mu's. However, after using that sword move, she did not seem as weak as Chu-Mu. From this point, it could be seen that Han Ruoshue's application of sword momentum was above Chu-Mu's. In addition, her cultivation realm and other aspects were higher than Chu-Mu's. This also allowed Chu-Mu to see the infinite possibilities of the development of sword momentum. Shaking his head slightly, Chu-Mu suddenly felt that what he had learned was too complicated. Compared to other swordsmen, Chu-Mu was involved in too many aspects that needed to be improved. Not to mention other aspects, just the 3 essences of swordsmen had already surpassed many people. Moreover, he still needed to comprehend sword momentum. Not only did he need to comprehend it, but he also needed to know how to apply it after comprehending it. Only then could he achieve the greatest effect with the least consumption. At this moment, Chu-Mu wished that he could master the doppelganger technique and split himself into 2 and 3 so that each of them could comprehend different things. Maybe in the future, I will have to make some choices, but not now. Chu-Mu's eyes turned deep. Right now, I need to do my best to improve my strength on the right path. I can't let go of any of them. Only when I am strong and profound enough can I comprehend the ultimate essence and truly understand the path of choice. Time flew by quickly. Before he knew it, 30 days had passed. At this moment, Chu-Mu was killing a 2-striped blood demon. Before he could pick out the blood demon core of the 2-striped blood demon, a powerful force of the heavens and the earth instantly enveloped Chu-Mu. Before Chu-Mu could react, he felt that the world was spinning out of his control. At the same time, in other parts of the blood demon territory, the other human swordsmen who were still alive were enveloped by the powerful and irresistible force of the heavens and the earth. In the next moment, their figures flashed and they disappeared. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 227. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At the foot of a mountain outside the great Kuan sword residence, balls of light flickered. One figure after another appeared out of thin air. Soon, there were more than 1,000 of them. We're out. Many people had blank looks on their faces. Ha! This is no longer the blood demon realm. This is the sword residence. This is the foot of the mountain outside the inner residence. Someone reacted and immediately shouted. Everyone came to their senses and realized that they had unknowingly left the blood demon realm and returned to the foot of the mountain outside the inner residence. It was also the place where they had entered the blood demon realm. I remember now. There seems to be a record in the ancient books. The Blood Demon Realm is a very magical void realm. It is different from other void realms. The time it opens is not fixed, but it can only be entered for a month at a time. Once the time is up, the Blood Demon Realm will repel you and send you back to the place where you entered the Blood Demon Realm, someone said in realization. The others nodded and said that they had read or heard of such a saying. They had just forgotten about it for a while. Chu Mu was also teleported out. He quickly came to his senses and looked around. Only then did he realize where he was. He could not help but be surprised by the wonders of the Blood Demon Realm. At the same time, he glanced around and saw Han Ruoxue not far away. The people who were teleported out all had traces of killing intent. However, these killing intents were like rootless duckweed and smoke, quickly fading away. Chu Mu! A shout sounded. A figure quickly moved and appeared beside Chu Mu. I knew you were still alive. I'm glad you're alive too. Chu Mu looked at Liang Haishan and smiled. Liang Haishan looked rather miserable. However, it was already very good that he could survive in a place like the Blood Demon Realm. No matter how miserable he looked, it was still acceptable. Fortunately, I ran into senior brother Situ Ko's team. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived. Liang Haishan smiled. Then, he asked curiously, how did you escape the pursuit of that four-striped mutated little blood demon? I was lucky enough to be saved, Chu Mu said with a smile. He did not say who saved him. Saved? Liang Haishan was stunned. His mind raced as if he was trying to figure out who had the ability to kill the four-striped mutated little blood demon. Could it be, before he could say anything, someone beside him yelled anxiously, "Let's go to the 100 Affair Hall. I got dozens of blood demon cores this time. They can be exchanged for thousands of credit." Only a few dozen. I got more than 100. I can exchange them for more than 10,000 credit. Let's go, Chu Mu said. Oh, all right. Liang Haishan nodded as he came to a realization. As they walked towards Astral Nine's 100 Affair Hall, Chu Mu looked at the people around him. There weren't as many people as there had been before they'd entered. At least half of them were gone. In other words, of the thousands of students who had entered the Blood Demon Realm, more than 1,000 had died. This was probably the first time in many years that the Inner Academy had suffered such a loss. However, the path of a swordsman was filled with life and death. It was a mixture of blood and fire. Death was not uncommon. The remaining 1,000 or so students were divided into the 10 academies of the Inner Academy. On average, each academy only had 100 or 200 people. More than 100 people rushed towards Astral Nine's 100 Affair Hall. It's Senior Han. Senior Han, after you. Dressed in white, Han Ruoxue's expression was cold. She stood at the front and handed over the blood demon cores to the 100 Affair Hall's deacons. The 100 Affair Hall had sent 3 deacons to count the blood demon cores. Han Ruoxue did not say a word as she continuously took out blood demon cores from her low-grade spatial bracelet. The 3 deacons began counting the blood demon cores as she took them out. Chu Mu noticed that Han Ruoxue was wearing a black, iron-colored spatial bracelet on each of her hands. 131 striped blood demon cores, 262 striped blood demon cores, 373 striped blood demon cores. After the deacon's announcement, Han Ruoxue's expression was still cold. However, the students behind her all began to exclaim. As expected of Senior Han. She's ranked 53rd on the bronze sword list. 284 striped blood demon cores, 32 5-striped blood demon cores, and 1 4-striped mutated blood demon core. Han Ruoxue, are you sure you want to exchange all of these blood demon cores for credits? The deacon confirmed. Yes. Han Ruoxue nodded. These blood demon cores will give you a total of 39,000 credit. Because a mutated blood demon core is 10 times more valuable than an ordinary blood demon core, a 4-striped mutated blood demon core is 10 times more valuable than an ordinary 5-striped blood demon core, said the deacon. He took Han Ruoshue's identity sword token and transferred 39,000 credits to her. Han Ruoshue put away her identity token and turned to leave, leaving behind countless exclamations and adoration. There's actually 39,000 credits. Chu Mu was also shocked, but when he thought about Han Ruoshue's terrifying strength, he understood. If he had that kind of strength, he could have done even better. After Han Ruoshue left, a second person immediately walked to the table and quickly placed the bag on his back on the table. This time, most of the Inner Palace students who had entered the Blood Demon realm were at the initial stages of the Qi transformation realm. A few of them were Deshang, and there were very few students who had completed the Qi transformation realm. In all of Astral 9, aside from Han Ruoshue, there were only 3 or 4 who had completed the Qi transformation realm. However, aside from Han Ruoshue, the few students who had completed the Qi transformation realm had only received a few 100,000 credits, which was less than 200,000. Chu Mu, how many blood demon cores did you get? Liang Haishan suddenly asked. Not that many, Chu Mu replied. I didn't get that many either. Less than 100, Liang Haishan said. With your strength, you should have gotten more than me. Chu Mu smiled but didn't give a specific number. Even now, he didn't know how many blood demon cores he had in his spatial bracelet. Some students didn't leave after exchanging their credits, but instead stood to the side and watched. One student after another exchanged their credits, and after a few dozen, it was finally Liang Haishan's turn. Liang Haishan looked excited. He placed the bag on the table and opened it, revealing the blood demon cores to the attendant. 83 one-striped blood demon cores and 36 two-striped blood demon cores. Do you want to exchange them all? The attendant asked after checking. Yes, I'll exchange them all. Liang Haishan nodded vigorously. Why would he keep them if he didn't exchange them? That's a total of 15,500 credits, the attendant said. 15,500 credit. Not bad. It can be considered as credits that can only be obtained after 1 year and 3 months. Liang Haishan turned and walked to Chu Mu's side. He smiled and said, Most importantly, in the blood demon realm, my swordsmanship improved by leaps and bounds because of your guidance. If I were to fight Zhuang Tong with pure swordsmanship now, I'd definitely be able to defeat him within 100 moves. Chu Mu nodded and walked to the table. It was his turn now. He took out the blood demon cores from the spatial bracelet on his left wrist. He has a spatial bracelet. Immediately, a low cry came from behind and beside him. A Qi transformation stage student actually has a spatial bracelet. How incredible! After a month of slaughter in the blood demon realm, Chu Mu's Xiantian sword Qi had stabilized. Although he hadn't cultivated any profound level techniques, no one thought that Chu Mu was just a rookie who had just entered the Qi transformation stage. Indeed, blood and fire were the best ways for a swordsman to grow. A Qi transformation stage student has a spatial bracelet. This person must have a powerful background. We can't afford to offend him, someone thought. A Qi transformation stage student has a spatial bracelet. Why doesn't Deshang have a spatial bracelet now that I'm a Qi transformation stage student? I must find a way to make his spatial bracelet mine. Someone else thought. The 3 attendants in front of Chu Mu were stunned. They couldn't hide the shock in their eyes because what they saw was different from what the other students saw. Although the other students knew that Chu Mu had a spatial wristband, it was covered by his sleeves and they thought it was a low-rank spatial wristband. However, the 3 attendants saw that it wasn't a low-rank spatial wristband. The color was a middle-rank spatial wristband. A Qi transformation stage student who had a low-grade spatial bracelet could be said to have a powerful background. However, a mid-grade spatial bracelet couldn't be explained by a powerful background. They were used to seeing many members of the royal family. It was already amazing for a Qi transformation stage student to have a low-grade spatial bracelet. Chu Mu ignored them and continued to take out blood demon nuclei from his spatial bracelet. He also wanted to know how many blood demon nuclei he had. The three attendants looked at each other and were shocked again. They hurriedly counted. The spectating students were also shocked. This is not a lot? Liang Haishan smiled bitterly. Up until now, Chu Mu had taken out more than 300 blood demon nuclei. It seemed that he was still taking out more. It's already more than 500, right? Even if they're all one-stripe blood demon nuclei, this is still too many. Compared to him, I'm just a piece of trash. No more, Chu Mu said indifferently as he stopped. However, there was already a large pile of blood demon nuclei in front of him. 751 stripe blood demon nuclei, 922 stripe blood demon nuclei, 163 stripe blood demon nuclei, 10 4-stripe blood demon nuclei, and 1 2-stripe mutated blood demon nucleus. As the attendant spoke, he felt that his mouth was very dry. The nearby students were all dumbfounded. Although there were no 5-stripe blood demon nuclei, there were so many 1-stripe and 2-stripe blood demon nuclei that it was far more than the others. Even Senior Sister Han couldn't compare. Are you sure you want to exchange them all for credits? The attendant asked again. He couldn't hide the surprise on his face. Yes. Chu Mu nodded. If you exchange all these blood demon nuclei, you'll get a total of 314,000 credits. The attendant swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said with difficulty, 314,000 credits. The students were all at a loss. Wasn't this number even higher than Senior Sister Han's? Given Senior Sister Han's strength, it was normal for her to get more than 300,000 credits. However, was it normal for a Qi transformation swordsman to get so many credits, even more than Senior Sister Han? Whether it was normal or not, Chu Mu's 314,000 credits were beyond his expectations. With these credits, not only could he exchange them for the 9 Revolutions Heavenly Prime, but he could also look at other things. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for it at Qidian.com. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 228. This guy must be lucky to have found the space bracelet somewhere in the first level of the Blood Demon realm. There just so happened to be a lot of Blood Demon cores in it. Otherwise, how could he have obtained so many blood demon cores with his Qi transformation realm cultivation? In the end, many people thought so, because this was the most reasonable reason they could think of. No matter what they thought or guessed, Chu Mu didn't care. He first returned to the sword tower, washed himself with warm water, changed into a clean set of clothes, and immediately went to the art depository tower. When he arrived at the art depository tower, Chu Mu didn't hesitate at all and directly went to the 3rd floor. Fortunately, it's still here. Looking at the books in the bookshelf, Chu Mu breathed a sigh of relief. He was worried that he would be a step too late and someone else would have exchanged for them. He immediately took out his identity sword token and pressed it on the seal. 100,000 credits were automatically deducted from the token, leaving him with more than 260,000 credit. Holding the 9 rotation of Heavenly Origin book in his hand, Chu Mu was truly relieved and immediately put it into the space bracelet. I still have more than 260,000 credits. Let's look at other things, such as swordsmanship secret methods. Chu Mu muttered to himself and directly went to the 4th floor. He planned to start from there. The swordsmanship I have mastered so far, except for the form of wind, are all advanced swordsmanship. My top priority should be to find a more advanced swordsmanship to cultivate. Surmounting swordsmanship, or ancient swordsmanship. Thinking of ancient swordsmanship, Chu Mu's heart was burning. Ancient swordsmanship was more powerful than surmounting swordsmanship, but Chu Mu didn't know if he could cultivate ancient swordsmanship now. It was just like he couldn't cultivate surmounting swordsmanship when he was in the Sword Qi realm, because he couldn't bear the consumption of surmounting swordsmanship. Chu Mu had already seen the Sword Qi formula on the 4th floor, so he ignored it and went directly to the swordsmanship section. There weren't many swordsmanships on the 4th floor, but they were all ancient swordsmanship. The first floor of the Art Depository Tower contained low-level to advanced swordsmanship, the second floor contained surmounting swordsmanship, and the third floor contained ancient swordsmanship. However, there were different levels of ancient sword technique. Some were strong, some were weak, some were profound, and some were shallow. The ancient sword techniques on the 3rd level were of a lower level, while the ones on the 4th level were of a higher level. In the time he had spent in the inner palace, Chu Mu had already gained some understanding of the ancient sword technique. The cultivation of the ancient sword technique required one's intent realm. If one's cultivation did not reach the required level, they would not be able to practice it normally, let alone execute it. On the other hand, the ancient sword technique mainly required one's intent. Of course, the cultivation and use of ancient sword arts also required sword qi, and one had to be at least in the qi transformation realm. However, compared to the qi transformation realm, the requirements were much clearer. If one had only cultivation but no intent realm, the ancient sword technique would be just for show. Without sufficient cultivation, the ancient sword technique would lose its support. Simply put, for ancient sword techniques, cultivation was the foundation, and intent realm was the necessary extension. Azure Python Sword Technique, a water-type human-tier ancient sword technique. There are a total of 4 moves. Requires one to grasp at least 50% of the water concept. Can be exchanged for 150,000 academic credit. Chu Mu gasped. A human-tier ancient sword technique actually required one to grasp at least 50% of the water concept. Furthermore, it required 150,000 academic credits to exchange for it. My wind concept is only at 45%. It's still a distance away from 50%. Chu Mu thought to himself. He moved his feet and looked at the other ancient sword technique. Dazzling Light Sword Technique, a light elemental human-tier ancient sword technique. There are a total of 3 moves. Requires one to grasp at least 50% of the light concept. Can be exchanged for 180,000 academic credit. The light concept is harder to comprehend than the 5 elements concept. However, once it is comprehended, its power will surpass the 5 elements concept. Light elemental sword techniques are similarly rare and more profound. It's worth 30,000 academic credits more than the Azure Python sword technique. Chu Mu thought to himself. Snow Dance Sword Technique, a snow elemental human-tier ancient sword technique. There are a total of 4 moves. Requires one to grasp at least 50% of the snow concept. Can be exchanged for 180,000 academic credit. The Snow Dance Sword Technique's academic credits are actually as high as the Dazzling Light Sword Technique. However, this is normal. The snow concept is considered one of the more obscure concepts. Chu Mu gradually looked through the ancient sword techniques one after another. He realized that the ancient sword techniques on the 4th level were all low-grade. Furthermore, all of them required one to grasp at least 50% of the concept. Chu Mu felt that if he could master such an ancient sword technique, he would definitely be able to fully display the power of the concept. It would be extremely terrifying. The concepts that I have comprehended are wind elemental, cloud elemental, and metal elemental. Then, the ancient sword technique that I have chosen should also be based on these 3 elements. However, the wind elemental concept is at 45%, while the cloud elemental and metal elemental concepts are only at 40%. As for the wind concept, it would be relatively faster to raise it to 50%. I should be able to do so within half a year. If I spend more time, I might be able to raise it to 50% in 3 months. However, it would be more difficult to raise the cloud elemental and metal elemental concepts to 50%. It might take a year or 2 or even longer. Chu Mu muttered to himself. Fine, I'll find a wind elemental ancient sword technique to cultivate. After searching for a while, Chu finally found 2 wind elemental ancient sword techniques. Hurricane Sword Technique, a wind elemental ancient sword technique with a total of 4 moves. It requires one to grasp at least 50% of the wind concept. It can be exchanged for 150,000 academic credit. Shocking Wind Sword Technique, a wind elemental ancient sword technique with a total of 3 moves. It requires one to grasp at least 50% of the wind concept. It can be exchanged for 160,000 academic credit. The Sword Mansion's academic credits exchange was not random. The difference between 150,000 and 160,000 was the difference in power between 2 different ancient sword techniques. Intuitively speaking, the power of the Shocking Wind Sword Technique should be stronger than the Hurricane Sword Technique. Hurricane Sword Technique. Shocking Wind Sword Technique. Chu pondered for a while before making a decision. It's only a difference of 10,000 academic credits. I'll choose the Shocking Wind Sword Technique. However, Chu did not immediately make the exchange. Instead, he walked up the stairs to the 3rd floor. He wanted to see if there were any differences between the ancient sword techniques on the 3rd floor and the 4th floor. Hurricane Sword Technique, a wind elemental ancient sword technique with a total of 4 moves. It requires one to grasp at least 40% of the wind concept. It can be exchanged for 100,000 academic credit. Chu checked while teleporting. In the end, he confirmed that the ancient sword technique on the 3rd floor of the Scripture Pavilion was a human elemental ancient sword technique like the one on the 4th floor. However, the requirement of the wind concept was 10% lower than the one on the 4th floor. Naturally, the ancient sword technique on the 3rd floor was not as powerful as the one on the 4th floor. Although I can cultivate the Hurricane Sword Technique as soon as I exchange for it, the Shocking Wind Sword Technique still has better prospects in the long run. After returning to the 4th floor, Chu took out his identity sword token and pressed it against the seal on the Shocking Wind Sword Technique. 160,000 academic credits were deducted and the seal disappeared. Chu grabbed the Shocking Wind Sword Technique and stored it in his spatial bracelet. I still have more than 100,000 academic credits left. Chu checked the number of academic credits in his identity sword token and was speechless. It seemed that the academic credits were too expendable. He had just obtained 310,000, and in the blink of an eye, 260,000 had been deducted. I still have 100,000 academic credits left. Let's look at the others. On the 4th floor, Chu walked towards the movement technique. After looking through them one by one, Chu had no choice but to give up. These movement techniques were all very advanced and required a lot of academic credit. They all cost more than 100,000. With Chu's current few thousand academic credits, it was simply not enough. He strolled around the secret technique area. There were not many secret techniques in the secret technique area. However, the academic credits required for each secret technique were frighteningly high. It was at least 300,000. It was at least twice as expensive as the ancient sword technique, sword chi art, and so on. So I'm still very poor. Chu shook his head and thought to himself. He wondered if he should take the blood evil stones and blood essences in his spatial bracelet to the 100 Affairs Hall and exchange them for academic credits. If he could exchange them for academic credits, then he would definitely be able to obtain even more. It would not be a problem to exchange for these secret techniques. However, there were some secret techniques that Chu did not like. Some secret techniques were simply not suitable for him to cultivate. Coupled with the fact that the academic credits required for them were too high, Chu was not very interested. Let's go to the 3rd floor first. Chu thought for a moment and thought to himself, I still don't know the specific functions of the blood evil stones and blood essences. It's not good to rashly exchange them. If they are of great use to me, then it won't be so easy to obtain them again. It's hard to say when the blood demon realm will appear again. Therefore, I should keep the blood evil stones and blood essences as much as possible. The movement techniques on the third floor were all within the acceptable range of Chu Mu's academic credit. However, after looking through them, Chu Mu did not particularly like any of them. Currently, Chu Mu felt that the Phantom Steps was very practical. It was just that its level was a little low. He walked towards the secret technique area. There were more secret techniques on the third floor than on the fourth floor. The academic credits required for exchange were also not as frightening. However, some of them were indeed beyond the acceptable range of Chu Mu's academic credits. However, there were also some that were within 100,000 academic credit. As he searched, Chu Mu's eyes lit up. He was immediately attracted by one of the secret technique. Supreme Secret Technique, Transcendent Secret Technique. This secret technique is unable to increase one's strength. However, after cultivating it, it can permanently increase the level of the movement technique. The upper limit is the transcendent level. The exchange rate is 100,000 academic credit. Note: those with extremely high perception can learn it quickly. The total exchange rate for a transcendent movement technique and a transcendent movement technique is at least 100,000 academic credit. However, the Supreme Secret Technique only requires 100,000 academic credits to increase the level of both movement technique and movement technique. Although the upper limit is the transcendent level, it is enough for me. Moreover, the following note states that those with extremely high perception can learn it quickly. I believe that with my perception, I will definitely be able to cultivate this secret technique in a short period of time. Without any hesitation, Chu Mu took out his identity sword token again and pressed it against the seal of the Supreme Secret Technique to exchange for the secret technique. For Chu Mu, instead of choosing a new transcendent movement technique or movement technique to cultivate, he would rather improve the Phantom Steps to the transcendent level. This was because he was very satisfied with the Phantom Step. Moreover, he had already cultivated it to perfection. Once it reached the transcendent level, it might not be perfect, but for him, who had already grasped the essence of the Phantom Steps, it would not be difficult for him to cultivate it to perfection. Chu Mu left the scripture pavilion in satisfaction. Although the academic credits in his identity sword token had dropped from 300,000 to only a few thousand, he did not feel the pinch at all. Academic credits were like money. He would use them when he needed them. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 229. After squandering almost all the credits in his identity sword token, Chu Mu returned to the sword tower with a full load. As soon as he walked to the second floor of the sword tower and sat down, Chu Mu quickly took out all 3 books from his space bracelet. One of the books in his hands was 9 Rotations of Heavenly Origin. Chu Mu immediately opened it and began to read it carefully from the first page. The first sentence made Chu Mu feel that it was profound and mysterious. It was far from being comparable to 3 levels of Qiyuan, which was a low-grade profound level martial art, nor was it comparable to Shang Yuan's Sword Qi Manual. Simply put, Shang Yuan's Sword Qi Manual was only a superficial knowledge compared to 9 Rotations of Heavenly Origin. However, Chu Mu, who had already thoroughly understood Shang Yuan's Sword Qi Manual, had a better start on 9 Rotations of Heavenly Origin. In addition to his monstrous comprehension, he had a basic understanding of 9 Rotations of Heavenly Origin after reading it carefully. Chu Mu continued to read it twice. He had a deeper understanding of 9 Rotations of Heavenly Origin, but it was still limited to a superficial level. It is worthy of being called a high-grade profound level martial art. The profoundness within is so profound that even with my comprehension, I can't comprehend it in a short period of time. It seems that it will take me a few days. He said to himself, put down the book, and picked up the second book, Sword Art of Consternation. The content of Sword Art of Consternation was much less than that of 9 Rotations of Heavenly Origin, not even 1/3 of it, but it was still very profound. In addition to words, this sword art also had pictures, but there were no annotations next to it. Therefore, if he wanted to comprehend it, he had to completely rely on himself. After reading it once, Chu Mu had a superficial understanding of this sword art, which was more in-depth than what he had read in the memo. However, in order to cultivate the wind shock sword art, one must at least comprehend 50% of the wind concept. Chu Mu had only comprehended 45%, which was not enough. Therefore, his top priority now was to raise his wind concept to 50%. He put down the shocking wind swordsmanship and picked up the last book, Heavenly Secret. After Chu Mu flipped through this secret technique that claimed to be able to be mastered quickly, Chu Mu immediately comprehended a third of it. Good, it really is a secret technique prepared for people with high perception. Chu Mu couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Once one could fully comprehend the mysteries of the secret technique, one's cultivation speed would be very fast. It would save one unnecessary detours, and it would be easier to cultivate. If a person with average comprehension were to cultivate it, just the beginning would probably take a lot of time. I haven't cultivated any heavenly level technique yet. The 9 cycles of heavenly origin is a must, and the sooner I master it, the better. Once I master it, my overall strength will definitely increase significantly. In addition, I can fully comprehend the heavenly secrets in a short period of time, so it won't be too difficult to cultivate it. Once I master the phantom steps, flashing wind shadow, and wandering in the wind, I will be able to reach the super level. My overall strength will also increase significantly. As for the wind shock sword art, this ancient sword art seems to be very powerful and mysterious. Moreover, it requires 50% of the wind concept. Therefore, I will allocate a part of my time every day to focus on comprehending the wind concept. I will temporarily put aside the cloud concept and metal concept and strive to raise my wind concept to 50% in the shortest time possible. I will also take some time every day to comprehend the wind shock sword art. I believe that when my wind concept reaches 50%, the mysteries of the wind shock sword art will also be comprehended by me. The difficulty of cultivating it will be even lower. Oh right, I also got a picture scroll from the Blood Demon Doppelganger of the Blood Demon Doppelganger. When I return to the Sword Tower, there will be a seal, so my movements won't affect the surroundings. Putting down the heavenly secrets, Chu Mu took out the picture scroll from the space bracelet. Walking in front of a table and gently putting down the picture scroll, Chu Mu took a deep breath. With a focused expression, he pushed the picture scroll open with his right hand. In an instant, a dazzling golden light burst out. Chu Mu subconsciously squinted his eyes and covered his eyes with his hands. He couldn't see any image from the open picture scroll because the dazzling golden light kept bursting out like the sun. In this golden light, Chu Mu felt a boundless sharpness that swept past his body as if it wanted to cut countless holes in his body. In the blink of an eye, the golden light on the picture scroll became even more intense. In an instant, it surrounded Chu Mu as if it had pierced through his body. Chu Mu felt as if he was in the middle of a golden torrent. This golden torrent seemed to be condensed from strands of pure and resplendent golden sword aura. It flowed endlessly, and wherever it passed, regardless of whether it was solid or void, everything was sliced apart and shattered. It was unstoppable. This was the concept of gold. The essence of gold, the sharpness of gold, and the sharpness of gold. Chu Mu only felt that his concept of gold, which was difficult to increase by 40%, trembled slightly. It seemed to show signs of improvement. And in this endless golden torrent, a sword suddenly appeared. It was a sword condensed by countless golden rays. This sword was incomparably dazzling. Once it was formed, it had the power to cut through heaven and earth. The sword slashed down. In an instant, the golden torrent paused. A golden ray tore through the torrent and attacked Chu Mu. There was no way to dodge. The golden ray that tore through heaven and earth struck Chu Mu. Chu Mu seemed to have been split into two halves. In a moment of shock, the golden torrent and the golden sword disappeared. Chu Mu stood in front of the table in a daze. He was unscathed. Only the remnant of gold in his eyes gradually disappeared. A large amount of information flowed into Chu Mu's mind. Chu Mu quickly digested it. After a long time, Chu Mu mumbled to himself, "The Golden Scroll? It's indeed one of the 8 scrolls mentioned in the Wind Scroll's information." He was deep in thought. Just like the Wind Scroll, Chu Mu obtained the form of gold from the Golden Scroll. Apart from the form of gold, there was another piece of information. It was very important information. Without this piece of information, Chu Mu would only treat the form of gold as a surmounting sword skill, just like the form of wind. The form of gold isn't a surmounting sword skill. It's a part of a secret technique. Chu Mu thought to himself, the form of wind that I've always treated as a surmounting sword skill is also a part of this secret technique. The 8 scrolls. In addition to this information, there was also the secret of how to use one of the 8 phases, the metal phase, and so on. The 8 scrolls secret technique. Form of wind. Form of gold. There should be 6 scrolls left. Chu Mu was deep in thought. What are the 6 scrolls called? The form of gold is to lock the power of the form of gold into one's body and increase the power of the gold sword skill by 30% for a certain period of time. The form of wind should also lock the power into one's body and increase the power of the wind sword skill by 30% for a certain period of time. However, I've only obtained the method to perform the form of gold. I don't have the form of wind. I wonder if I can deduce the form of wind from the form of gold? Otherwise, I'll have to find time to go back to the Chu clan, Chu Mu thought to himself. He didn't know why the information about the form of gold didn't appear when he was comprehending the form of wind. Perhaps it was because his cultivation had reached the Qi transformation realm, or perhaps it was because he had comprehended 40% of his artistic conception, or perhaps it was because of both. No matter what, Chu Mu didn't obtain it before, but now he did. The secret technique, the 8 scrolls secret technique. Although it lacked 6 scrolls and the secret technique to perform one of them, the form of gold alone could increase the power of the gold sword skill by 30%. This was enough to increase Chu Mu's strength by a lot. I wonder how long the form of gold can last after performing it? It seems that I'll only know after practicing it. However, secret techniques that increase strength usually have side effects. I wonder what the side effects of the 8 scrolls secret technique are? The form of gold didn't mention any side effects, but that didn't mean they didn't exist. It seemed that he would only know after experiencing them for himself. For a moment, Chu Mu suddenly felt that he had too many things to do. The 9 rotations of heaven's origin, shocking wind sword art, supreme mystery secret technique, and the form of gold were all waiting for him to comprehend and cultivate. Cultivation is the foundation. Let me start with the 9 rotations of heaven. Chu Mu thought to himself and put away the form of gold. He picked up the 9 rotations of heaven's origin and read it again. This time, he read it more carefully than before. Every sentence and word was carefully analyzed, and then interpreted and understood as a whole. During the trip to the Blood Demon territory, some of the other people who had accumulated enough credits went to the art repository, sword tool pavilion, and other relevant places to exchange for credit. There were also a lot of topics surrounding Chu Mu. They were all about how Chu Mu, a Qi transformation stage swordsman, had a space bracelet and obtained 310,000 credit. At the same time, those who didn't know Chu Mu in the past also learned of the name Chu Mu. They also knew that Chu Mu was a new student who had just entered the inner mansion and challenged and defeated the senior student, Meng Chao, whose cultivation was higher than his. Chu Mu didn't know any of this. During this period, he completely closed his door and refused to entertain anyone. He was immersed in comprehending the 9 rotations of heaven's origin. In the blink of an eye, 3 days flew by. Finally, Chu-Mu read the 9 rotations of heaven's origin once again. I've finally comprehended the mysteries of this technique. Next, I'll start to cultivate and transform my innate sword energy into heaven's origin sword energy. It will be purer and more powerful. Closing the book and putting it aside, Chu-Mu slowly exhaled, exhaling the murky air in his body and inhaling the clear air. His eyes slowly closed, and the world disappeared before his eyes. All kinds of distracting thoughts were eliminated. In just 3 breaths, Chu-Mu entered a state of tranquility. After a few breaths of time, Chu-Mu's mind naturally appeared the formula of the 9 rotations of heaven's origin and the transportation route map. The innate sword energy in his dantian was guided out. It followed the route of the 9 rotations of heaven's origin and was slowly transported. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 230. Every moment in the Blood Demon territory, Chu-Mu was on high alert, because he could run into a group of small blood demons at any time. Although it was very easy for Chu-Mu to kill a small blood demon with his strength, even a lion had to try its best to catch a rabbit, not to mention that he was in the Blood Demon territory, a place where danger lurked everywhere. One moment of carelessness, and he might fail miserably. After returning to the Sword Tower, Chu-Mu was finally able to relax. The combination of the comfortable days and the vigilance of the Blood Demon territory was a very good way. Relaxing did not mean slacking off. Every day, Chu-Mu was cultivating and reflecting. The first rotation of the 9 rotations of heaven's origin was not difficult to cultivate. In just 2 hours, Chu-Mu succeeded. Then, it took him half a day to cultivate the second rotation. It took Chu-Mu 1 day to cultivate the 3rd rotation, and 3 days to cultivate the 4th rotation. Now, Chu-Mu was cultivating the 5th rotation. Each rotation of the 9 rotations of heaven's origin was more profound and difficult than the last. But with each rotation, Chu-Mu's innate sword chi would be a little purer and a little thicker. The sword chi of heaven's origin was constantly channeled. One rotation after another, the spiritual energy in the sword tower gathered and entered his body through every pore. While nourishing his body, the spiritual energy quickly flowed to his meridians and was absorbed and transformed by the sword chi of heaven's origin. After 50 rotations, Chu-Mu vaguely felt the pain in his meridians. He knew that he had reached the limit of his channeling. Although absorbing spiritual chi from the outside world and transforming it into Xiantian sword chi would also nourish one's meridians to a certain extent, this nourishment required a long period of time and was not something that could be done overnight. As a result, a chi transformation swordsman could carry far more days of the great cycle than a sword chi cultivator, but it was not without limit. When the burden reached a certain level, they would still have to stop cultivating to allow their meridians to recover. The heaven origin sword chi returned to his dantian as Chu-Mu formed a seal with both of his hands in front of him. His aura calmed down as he slightly opened his mouth and shot out a stream of white chi. This chi condensed into a sword and pierced through the air, leaving a trail that was a few meters long. As he opened his eyes, a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. The 5th revolution isn't that easy to master. Chu-Mu thought to himself as he leaped up. He knew that he couldn't rush it. No matter what, the 9 transformations of heaven origin was a black-level upper-class technique. With his current chi transformation stage cultivation, it was already very good that he could cultivate to the 4th transformation. Under normal circumstances, if a chi transformation stage swordsman could cultivate to the 2nd transformation in a short period of time, it would be quite amazing. If he could cultivate to the 3rd transformation, he would be 1 in 100. If he could cultivate to the 4th transformation, he would be 1 in 1,000. Not only did this require talent, it also required a strong comprehension ability. It required a thorough understanding of the technique. Otherwise, without a thorough understanding, how could one cultivate? In terms of sword chi cultivation, I should be 30% stronger than I was before I cultivated the 9 transformations of heaven origin. After a few days of consolidation, my swordsmanship has finally reached the level of dim light. I don't need any prelude to display the dim light sword. Chumu walked to the balcony and looked at the changing white clouds in the sky. His mind was open as he thought to himself, however, if I want to display the dim light sword as I wish, I still need some time to strengthen it. The emptiness realm is really mysterious. It is a world of its own. Suddenly, Chumu felt that the seal was touched. In a flash, he turned into a shadow and quickly went downstairs to the seal. He saw 2 people outside the seal attacking it with sword chi. A figure suddenly appeared in front of the 2 people as fast as lightning. They were separated by the seal, which startled the 2 people. They hurriedly stepped back with uncertain expressions. Only then did they see Chumu clearly. "What can I do for you 2? Chumu looked at the 2 strangers outside the seal and asked simply. "You are Chumu? We are from the Proud Sword Gang. I am Huang Xiaoan and he is Chao Lei." The 2 strangers said directly. "Proud Sword Gang." Chumu suddenly understood. "What can I do for you? I have heard of you. You are Chumu. It is said that when you were still in the outer palace, you rejected the invitation of the Proud Sword Gang." Huang Xiaoan had the sword qi cultivation of qi transforming Deshang. Therefore, when he spoke to Chumu, his attitude was quite condescending. "But don't worry, we are not here to invite you to join the Proud Sword Gang. After all, although the Proud Sword Gang is not as good as the first palace, the second pavilion, and the 3 alliances, it is not a place that just anyone can join. I am not interested in listening to your nonsense." Chumu's expression did not change. He said indifferently and was about to turn around. "Wait." Huang Xiaoan's expression changed, and he was a little angry. Chumu's actions were not giving him any face. No matter what, he was still a senior brother. "The reason we came to find you this time is because of our gang's vice leader Zhao's order. We came to borrow something from you." "No." Chumu did not even want to know what they wanted to borrow. He directly refused. These 2 people of the Proud Sword Gang came with a high and mighty attitude. The so-called borrowing was just an excuse. No matter what it was, if it was really lent, it would be theirs. "You stop." Huang Xiaoan and Chao Lei's expressions changed. They immediately shouted angrily, "Our vice gang leader Zhao is at the peak of qi transforming realm. He lives in the heaven-level sword tower. His strength is amazing. You can't compare with him. Vice gang leader Zhao took the initiative to borrow something from you. That is giving you face. If that is the case, then ask your so-called vice gang leader Zhao to come here himself. Wouldn't that show more sincerity?" Chumu said with a smile. I won't say anything unnecessary. Vice gang leader Zhao wants to borrow the space bracelet and 300,000 credit. He has a great use for it. Once he uses it, he will immediately return the bracelet to you. The 300,000 credits will also be returned to you in the future," Huang Xiaoan said with a pale face. A flash of understanding flashed through Chumu's eyes. So they were here for his spatial bracelet and 300,000 academic credit. He faintly shook his head and didn't say anything else. Ignoring Huang Xiaoan and Chao Lei, he walked towards the sword tower and returned to the 2nd floor. "Chumu, come out." Huang Xiaoan was furious. He waved his Xiantian sword qi to attack the seal. Unfortunately, the seal was very strong. Even a normal qi high realm swordsman would not be able to break it, let alone a qi Deshang realm swordsman. His attack merely caused ripples to appear on the seal. "Damn you, you have completely offended the Proud Sword Gang. From now on, you will not have a good life in the inner house," Huang Xiaoan fiercely threatened. He turned around and left angrily without looking at Chao Lei. "Proud Sword Gang. I didn't expect that the conflict with you in the outer house was not over. Here in the inner house, it is the beginning of the real conflict." Chu Mu looked at Huang Shaoan and Chao Lei's departure through the window on the second floor, and said to himself, however, the proud sword gang is just an ant compared to the first palace, 2 pavilions, and 3 alliances. If it were the first palace, 2 pavilions, and 3 alliances, I would still be afraid. But the proud sword gang, since they want to provoke me and kill me like a fat sheep, then they should be prepared to regret it. After that, Chu Mu still did not leave the sword tower. He even prepared a large amount of dry food and water for his meals and drink. Other than the 8 hours of sleep every day, Chu Mu spent the rest of his time on cultivation. The 9 rotation heavenly origin and the Shang Xian secret art. Under this kind of cultivation, Chu Mu's sword qi cultivation improved little by little. However, it was not so easy to reach the initial level of qi transformation. Even if Chu Mu absorbed the spiritual qi of the sword tower while holding the lower-grade spiritual stone, the progress was still very slow. He knew that this was because his cultivation talent was only at level 7. If his cultivation talent could be improved again, even if it was only to level 6, his cultivation speed would increase a lot, or even double. With a double improvement, the effect of cultivation would be very obvious. Unfortunately, the treasures that could improve one's cultivation talent were too rare. Even if there were, they were incomparably precious. With Chu Mu's current ability, it was impossible for him to obtain them. After a period of time, I will be able to reach the 5th transformation of the 9 revolutions of Heavenly Yuan and enter the 6th transformation. At that time, my innate sword qi will be more and purer, and my overall strength will be improved again. Moreover, the Shang mystery secret technique is also about to reach the perfection. Once it reaches the perfection, my body movement and footwork will be upgraded to the super level. In addition, my wind essence has also increased to 46%. It's not too far away from 47%. I wonder if it will reach 47% when I reach the 5th transformation of the 9 revolutions of Heavenly Yuan? The cloud essence is still at 40%, but the gold essence has slowly increased to 41% because of the gold painting scroll. In addition, the gold image secret technique is indeed not bad, but the side effects are very obvious. I will not use it if I can. Even if I use it, it will only increase the power of the gold element. My current gold element sword art is only a high-level sword art. If only I could use the wind image secret technique. Through the gold image secret technique, Chu Mu deduced the secret technique of the wind image secret technique. Nothing was wrong, but he could not use it successfully. After trying, Chu Mu came to the conclusion that he must inherit the wind image secret technique. Otherwise, even if he knew how to use it, it would be useless. It was as if he was missing a key. I will find time to go back to the Chu clan. The voice returned to silence. Chu Mu once again entered into cultivation. Everything was very urgent. Day after day passed. During this period, the people from the Ao sword gang appeared again. This time, it was Huang Shaoan and another qi transforming swordsman, Deshang. This qi transforming swordsman had a higher cultivation base than Huang Shaoan, and his position in the Ao sword gang seemed to be higher than Huang Shaoan. Unfortunately, Chu Mu did not have a good impression of them. Even though this person called Xing Jian had a much gentler attitude this time, Chu Mu still firmly refused to lend him the space bracelet and 300,000 academic credit. Naturally, in the end, Xing Jian's words and actions revealed a ruthless threat. The Tianyuan sword qi continued to move, one big cycle after another. All of a sudden, the spirit qi in the entire sword tower became violent, like boiling water, and quickly rushed into Chu Mu. In an instant, the spirit qi in the entire sword tower became a rare vacuum. Chu Mu's body shook. The Tianyuan sword qi paused for a moment, and then it started to move again, at a faster speed. The 5th transformation of the 9 transformations of Heaven Origin was finally completed. His hands formed a seal, and he stopped moving. He exhaled a mouthful of white qi that shot out like a sword. His eyes flashed with a bright light. Counterattack from now on. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 231. Chu Mu, this is the name list you asked for. Liang Haishan handed a name list to Chu Mu. His expression kept changing. After a moment of hesitation, he continued, with your strength, you can indeed challenge the right to live in the Sword Tower. But you don't have to choose only the members of the AO Sword Gang. This will completely offend the AO Sword Gang. When Chu Mu found Liang Haishan and asked him to give him a name list of the members of the AO Sword Gang, Liang Haishan had a bad feeling. When Liang Haishan knew that Chu Mu's purpose was to challenge the right to live in a higher-level sword tower, especially the members of the AO Sword Gang, he was extremely shocked. It was normal to challenge the right to live in a higher-level sword tower. There was nothing strange about it. But if it was a challenge aimed at a group or an organization, it was abnormal. Anyone would know that there must be something fishy about it. And the result of doing so would often be to make enemies with an organization, which would eventually become an irreconcilable hatred. Don't get involved in this matter, Chu Mu said. He took the name list and left Liang Haishan's sword tower for the branch of the 100 Affairs Hall. Liang Haishan was only a swordsman who had achieved initial success in Qi transformation. How could he compete with an organization like the AO Sword Gang? But Chu Mu was different from him. Chu Mu's ambition was higher than the sky. Are you sure you want to challenge the right to live in the Sword Tower? The deacon of the 100 Affairs Hall asked. Yes. Chu Mu answered lightly. You should be clear about the rules of the challenge, but I still have to repeat it. You have to defeat 10 members of the Sword Tower at the same level. If you fail once, the challenge will end with a failure. You can't apply for another challenge within 3 months. The deacon said, now make your choice. Do you want to randomly pick 10 members of the Sword Tower at the same level to challenge, or do you want to specifically challenge someone? Pick 10 from the people on this list. Chu Mu handed the name list to the deacon. The deacon took a few glances and his pupils shrank. He felt that this person came prepared. But this had nothing to do with him. He quickly picked 10 people from the list. The deacon sent out a notice in advance to inform these 10 people that someone was going to challenge them, so they could be prepared. Let's go, I will be your witness, the deacon said. Chu Mu's first challenge was Zhang Tianqing. You are Chu Mu, are you sure you want to challenge me? Zhang Tianqing creased his brows and said. He already knew of Chu Mu's name. However, he didn't know of the relationship between Huang Shaoan and Chu Mu. He only thought that this was a simple challenge. Draw your sword. After defeating you, I still have to defeat the others. Arrogant. Zhang Tianqing was so angry that he started laughing. He pulled out his sword and innate sword qi surged forth. But all his efforts were in vain. In the next breath, he felt a cold blade on his neck. He knew he had lost, and his expression became gloomy. Zhang Tianqing's sword qi cultivation was only at the entry level, which was the same as Chu Mu's. However, Chu Mu cultivated the 9 revolutions of Heaven Yuan and had reached the 5th revolution. Zhang Tianqing cultivated the low profound level cultivation technique that was given to him for free by the inner house. Coupled with the gap between their sword arts, it was not strange for him to be defeated in one strike. 1 win in a row. The deacon recorded the result. He was secretly surprised. Chu Mu's unpredictable movements terrified him. Chu Mu and the deacon immediately rushed to another sword tower. Zhang Tianqing's expression changed. He gritted his teeth and finally followed them. He was very curious. This guy's second challenge is actually him. Zhang Tianqing was startled when he saw the second person Chu Mu challenged. This person was called Li Xinghui. He was also at the entry level of the Qi transformation realm. Similarly, he was defeated by Chu Mu in one strike. As a spectator, Zhang Tiancheng felt his hair stand on end when he saw Chu Mu defeat Li Xinghui in one strike. Li Xinghui's strength was not inferior to Zhang Tiancheng's, but he was defeated by Chu Mu in one strike even when he used his full strength. Chu Mu's unpredictable movements were like a ghost, and the sword in his hand was like a divine weapon from outer space. Zhang Tiancheng finally understood why he was defeated so quickly. 2 wins in a row. The deacon recorded again. He secretly thought that Chu Mu's challenge would not fail. After all, most of the students who lived in the yellow-level sword tower were only at the entry level of the Qi transformation realm. With such a cultivation level, they were defeated by Chu Mu in one strike. Even if they were at the initial level of the Qi transformation realm, they might not be a match for Chu Mu. He vaguely remembered that when Chu Mu had just entered the inner mansion, he had issued a challenge. At that time, his opponent was a student at the initial level of the Qi transformation realm. In the end, that student was defeated by Chu Mu. Looks like he's in the bag. The deacon secretly smiled. He went to challenge the third person, and Zhang Tiancheng followed him. The third person was from the Proud Sword Gang, so Zhang Tiancheng naturally knew him. How could they all be from the Proud Sword Gang? Zhang Tiancheng's expression suddenly changed. He thought of a possibility. Could it be that Chu Mu is using the challenge as an excuse to tarnish the reputation of the Proud Sword Gang? He's deliberately causing trouble for the Proud Sword Gang? If that's the case, then this Chu Mu is too arrogant. Zhang Tiancheng clenched his fists and gritted his teeth in anger. He wanted to grab Chu Mu and interrogate him, but unfortunately, he was not a match for Chu Mu. I can't just let this go. I must report this, Zhang Tiancheng secretly said, but before that, I need to confirm whether it's a coincidence or deliberately causing trouble for the Proud Sword Gang. 3 wins in a row. The deacon recorded again. 4 wins in a row. 5 wins in a row. One after another, Chu Mu won without any pressure. He easily defeated his opponent. None of them could make Chu Mu use his sword a second time. Zhang Tiancheng, who was following from a distance, became more and more upset. The 5 people who were defeated by Chu Mu in a row were all from the Proud Sword Gang. Again, Zhang Tiancheng's mouth kept twitching. He was sure that Chu Mu was indeed using the challenge as an excuse to cause trouble for the Proud Sword Gang. There was nothing strange about being defeated in this kind of challenge. However, if the 10 people who were defeated were all from the same group or organization, it would inevitably lead to some speculation and all kinds of discussions. I must report this as soon as possible, Zhang Tiancheng secretly said and quickly turned to leave. Chu Mu and the deacon knew that Zhang Tiancheng had been following them, but they didn't care. Now that he had left, they didn't care either. 6 wins in a row. The deacon recorded again. Next, 7 wins in a row. What? You said that Chu Mu applied for the right to live in the Sword Tower and challenged our Proud Sword Gang's people? Chao Lei was startled at first, then asked coldly. Yes, I was the first one to be challenged. The second one was Li Xinghui. The third one was, when I arrived here, Chu Mu had already challenged the 6th one, and it was still our gang's people. Zhang Tiancheng said with certainty. I see. You can go back. Chao Lei's expression changed as he said. This Chu Mu provoked our gang. We can't let him go. Zhang Tiancheng quickly said. Okay, I will report this immediately. You don't need to pay attention to it. Chao Lei frowned and waved his hand. Zhang Tiancheng didn't know what was going on, but Chao Lei guessed that it was because of the threat from Huang Shaoan and the others. He is indeed very courageous. Unfortunately, he is not smart enough to provoke our Proud Sword Gang. He is courting death. After Zhang Tiancheng left, Chao Lei's expression changed. He rubbed his chin and walked down the sword tower. He planned to find the higher-ups of the Proud Sword Gang and report this matter. 8 wins in a row. The deacon recorded again. 9 wins in a row. If you defeat the last one, you will have 10 wins in a row. You will get a chance to challenge a student of the sword tower, the deacon said. Chu Mu nodded and went to another sword tower. The 10th member of the Proud Sword Gang was defeated by Chu Mu with a single strike. Haha, congratulations, Chu Mu. You have 10 wins in a row. You will get a chance to challenge a student of the sword tower. You can use this chance now or later, but it must be within a month. The deacon said. I will use it now. I want to challenge him. Chu Mu pointed at the name on the list and said. He. The deacon's expression was a little strange, but he didn't object. So it's you. I lost to you last time because I was careless. This time, don't even think about defeating me. Meng Chao shouted with a stern voice. That's right. The student Chu Mu wanted to challenge was Meng Chao. Meng Chao had joined the Proud Sword Gang not long ago. Because he couldn't defeat Chu Mu, he couldn't join the Sky King Palace. Cut the crap, Chu Mu said as he pulled out the breeze sword. Meng Chao sneered and immediately pulled out his low-grade sword. He stabbed out with the sword and the flames burned. The air became hot, burning the ground and making it difficult for people to breathe. However, Chu Mu drew a circle with his sword, creating a suction force that sucked in all the heat. The tip of the sword trembled and circle after circle overlapped. The burning flames were all sucked in by the suction force. Even though Chu Mu hadn't practiced the shocking wind sword art yet, his sword skills had greatly improved. Chu Mu's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. Let me tell you, my fire essence has reached 40%. My raging flame sword art has also greatly increased. You can't be my opponent. Meng Chao shouted, as if he was emboldening himself. His sword was even more powerful. Chu Mu's whole body seemed to be surrounded by the flames. In that instant, the deacon vaguely saw a wisp of darkness flying through the raging flames. It was like an illusion. Meng Chao's protective sword chi was instantly shattered. Chu Mu's sword steadily fell on Meng Chao's throat. This. The deacon was very surprised. He knew that Chu Mu had defeated Meng Chao before, but now Meng Chao was even more powerful than before. He originally thought that even if Chu Mu could defeat Meng Chao again, it would at least take some effort. He didn't expect that Meng Chao would be defeated in less than 3 moves. This was too unbelievable. Impossible. Meng Chao couldn't accept this fact. He was a little dazed. Let's fight again. This time doesn't count. I haven't even used my full strength. Meng Chao was indeed defeated by Chu Mu without using his full strength. In the end, it was because Chu Mu's strength was much stronger than before. Chu Mu didn't care about Meng Chao's clamor. A defeat was a defeat. No matter how many times they fought, it would still be the same. Even if Meng Chao didn't want to admit defeat, Chu Mu wouldn't care. He didn't need Meng Chao to admit defeat. Congratulations, this sword tower number 2800 will be yours from now on. The deacon smiled and didn't care about Meng Chao. Number 2800. I want to continue. Chu Mu glanced at the tower and said. The deacon and Meng Chao were stunned. Their faces were full of shock. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation.